Well, I hope everybody's having a fantastic night so far. Or at least managing to get through your day. It is I, Galactic Streamlord, coming at you live from the Galactic Space Station once again. Here to bring you some more unfortunate news, as always. I say it's about time we get started. Hold on, second chat. I gotta do one thing, then we're gonna get right to it. Well, I've got a lot of stuff for us to cover today. It is a little overwhelming, but I'm going to attempt to get through as much of it as I possibly can. A lot of stuff has happened over the last couple of days, including some stuff I missed from before that, but I'm going to try and stay as current as I can until I run out of content, but I doubt that that latter half is going to happen. Okay, yeah, good to see everybody in chat. I appreciate you being here. It is time to go. You know, I listen to this a lot, and I think let's just start this off with a little bit of poetry.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The wise men at their end know dark is right. Because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men, who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men, near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Okay, and now into the thick of it.
I've given this talk for a long time, and a few years ago,
Whoops.
our department chairman said, would
Settle.
you please give this talk to...
There you go. Alright, where was I starting? Okay, we're gonna just hit this up real quick because I missed it when it happened. And I don't know how I missed it. I must have been sleeping. Something like that. And really, the speech itself we're not going to watch much of. But I just wanted us to look at this sign and what this individual is trying to get across. Did I put a Discord blast out? No, I didn't put out a Discord blast, actually. I've been slacking on all that right now. Because I'm so stressed out trying to get the Discord actually set up and functional. I have not done anything close to that. Okay, there we are. So this was from 2 months ago. Somehow I missed these signs, and I don't know how. But this is Senator Merkley of Oregon. And I don't even think we have to listen to what he has to say. These two signs say everything. And the fact is, I wish we had a Operation Gaza Rescue. We certainly don't yet, but good God, where was that? Where's Operation Gaza Rescue?
Now counting more than 27,000 dead, not including the estimates of those who might be trapped in the rubble. And this number, every few days, it goes up by another 1,000 people. And more than double that number, some estimated 67,000 Palestinians with significant injuries. And among the dead, among those 27,000, more than 18,000 women and children have died. You know, these numbers, they're numbers. They're hard to get your hands around. So think about it this way. If 18,000 women and children were lined up holding hands, they would form a line 13 miles long. Picture yourself going on a hike for 13 miles, and with every stride, another.
Yeah, I think we get the imagery there. Pretty cut and dry and horrific, but appreciated. Okay, I'm holding it together. We're only one video in. I'm totally good. I got it. I'm keeping it together. Okay. Let me go back here. Sorry, my already have too many windows open somehow. Let's fix that now. Okay. And I'm sure some of you probably already saw that video, but I had not. And I was shocked to see it only had 46,000 views. So I figured I'd click it. Next. Yeah, okay. This is just from a day ago. So we're immediately getting right back to current. Yeah, here.
The Palestinian Prime Minister has submitted his resignation. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas hopes that this cabinet reshuffle can be the first step in a process that ultimately will bring him back to power in Gaza. Now, if you remember, Abbas's Palestinian Authority was ousted, toppled by Hamas militants in 2007. Abbas has not been able to return to Gaza since then. He governs in the West Bank. But the war in Gaza, Israel's crackdown on Hamas, has created an opportunity that Abbas believes can bring him back to power. The United States says it supports a role for the authority in post-war Gaza, but it wants to see reforms and revitalization of the Palestinian Authority. This move, by replacing his prime minister and appointing a new government, Abbas hopes this will bring that international legitimacy and acceptance that he needs to move back into Gaza after the war. Now, the resignation comes as ceasefire efforts move forward between Israel and Hamas. Over the weekend, there was a new set of talks in Paris. There were reports, signals from all sides that these talks went well. In fact, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over the weekend says that Israel even wants a ceasefire. At the same time, though, he says he is still planning the invasion of Rafah. This is what is believed to be the last Hamas strong...
Exactly. Exactly. He talks out of both sides of his mouth, and we're expected to believe anything he says, and it falls so flat. And I don't understand how the media has continued to push it all this time.
Hold in Gaza. Netanyahu announced that the army has presented an operational plan for the invasion and also plans for evacuating the hundreds of thousands of Palestinian civilians who have moved to Rafah to seek shelter from fighting elsewhere in Gaza. There are no details yet on how this evacuation plan will work, but the signal is...
I feel like I've been saying it like over and over again, but Rafah is where Israel told everybody to go so that they could bomb the rest of Gaza, and now they're invading Rafah. So their whole claim before that we made sure to evacuate all the important civilians, everybody else left is Hamas. Now they're like, well, okay, now it's time for the civilians. That's basically what they're saying, and it's disgusting. Okay, there's way more. I'm gonna keep it going. Okay, this is in response, and maybe I should do this other video first. Yeah, I'm gonna do this in order. I'm gonna try and be a good boy. But just before I move forward, because like the thing is that the Palestinian Prime Minister resigning is a huge sign of his desire to unite Palestine, because the Palestinian Authority has been so unpopular with Palestinians and especially Gazans, and I think he's hoping to make some kind of a appeal by doing this. So hopefully it works and that they can be a unified people, and yeah, fingers crossed. Hello everybody appearing in chat, I see you all. Okay, next video is of what you've probably already seen or heard of, but if you haven't, this is just going to be context for more stuff we're looking at.
Now, the US President Joe Biden says an agreement for a temporary ceasefire in Gaza could be reached by Monday. And as part of it, he says Israel is ready to halt military activities during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, which also begins in the coming days. Al Jazeera sources say that the initial framework for the deal includes the exchange of 400 Palestinian prisoners for 40 Israeli captives held in Gaza. Israel has also reportedly agreed to the gradual return of displaced Palestinians to northern Gaza. Sources say under the deal, Israel would reposition its forces away from crowded areas and halt aerial surveillance for 8 hours a day. Now, Biden made his remarks during an appearance on a late-night chat show.
Wow. So,
and then we've got and he said,
how philanthropic, and just, you know, 8 hours, a full 8 hours a day. Wow.
Full agreement. There'll be a ceasefire while that takes place. Ramadan's coming up, and there's been an agreement by the Israelis that they would not engage in activities during Ramadan as well, in order to give us time to get all the hostages out. That gives us time to begin to move in directions that a lot of Arab countries are prepared to move in. And in the meantime, there are too many innocent people that are being killed. And
before I forget, hold on, I gotta back it up. Before I forget, I'm going to continue to say this one too. There are still American hostages in Gaza or wherever it is that Hamas is holding them, but it's been suggested and repeated over and over again that they are in Gaza. And that's where us, vicariously through Joe Biden and the Department of Defense, have been sending bombs to bomb American civilians with. So, you know, just contexting.
That gives us time to begin to move in directions that a lot of Arab countries are prepared to move in. And in the meantime, there are too many innocent people that are being killed. And Israel has slowed down the attacks in Rafah. They have to, and they've made a commitment to me. They're going to see to it that there's ability to evacuate significant portions of Rafah before they go and take out the remainder of Hamas. But it's a process. Israel has had the overwhelming support of the vast majority of nations. If it keeps this...
Okay. I'm so sick of hearing what he has to say. We're just skipping ahead. We know what his position has been terrible.
Mike, what does Biden know that we don't? Seems to be sort of order of the day when it comes to any potential ceasefire.
Indeed, yes. But there, in that statement that Biden made on the late night show, he's talking about
an immediate agreement, a midterm agreement, and a long-term agreement. He got a lot in that particular appearance on the Late Night Show. He's talking about the indication of a ceasefire beginning in coming days, saying that this has been agreed to in principle. Obviously, President Biden must be aware of something that the wider public is not, the discussions that have been going on between all the interested parties. But then he continues and says that Israel has committed as well to end activities during the holy month of Ramadan. Now, that begins around March the 10th. Biden saying that this would give people time to get the captives being held in Gaza out of that country. And then he goes even further and he says,
I love Amy Poehler, but watching her hug Joe Biden made me a little sick just now.
this in term, an extended ceasefire, would then give us time to alter the dynamic. And what he's hinting at here is a wider Arab recognition of Israel in exchange for a ceasefire or long-term agreement between Israel and Palestinians. So there's a lot packed into these comments that he made in the late night show, and clearly he's got access to information as President of the United States that the general public doesn't. But in brief, it would appear, well, President Biden says that there is an agreement in principle to get a ceasefire in place in coming days.
Mike, thanks very much for the update. Mike Hanna there for us in Washington, D.C. Well, Willem Marks joins us now from occupied East Jerusalem, and one wonders what Israel is either thinking or saying about Biden's comments. Willem.
Well, the Israeli government is not saying a huge amount. We've reached out to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office. They have said they are not offering comment on the remarks from the US leader. We've also reached out to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here, that's often involved in these kinds of negotiations and obviously often responds to what foreign governments say about Israel. They too have not responded to our requests. In terms of the other parties to this negotiation, of course, we've been hearing from the Qatari Foreign Ministry over the last couple of hours. Hamas, we've been trying to reach out to some of the people close to that organization. We've not been hearing back from them yet. They have spoken to Reuters over the course of the last few hours.
Oh god, a lot of stuff in chat here trying to keep up with. I hope that's a joke, Snicks, because while some of his internal policy economically has been okay, certainly hasn't been across the board amazing or anything. And then this fiasco is an absolute disgrace. So I can't. I'm sure that you must see that. Oh my god, BCAT is right. BCAT is right. Somehow that completely slipped my mind. He was totally her celebrity crush on Parks and Rec. She does have a real thing for establishment politicians, doesn't she?
Which they've said, and this is according to the Reuters news agency, these are unnamed officials inside Hamas saying that Biden's remarks suggesting the agreement had already been reached in principle were premature. There were still
night
big
AC.
gaps.
Good seeing you, pal. Get some sleep over there. I know that you're working on incredibly minimal sleep, so do take care of yourself, pal.
That needed to be bridged. Clearly, there is a concern that the details of this deal that have been put out there into the public are not entirely agreed on between the two sides. That may be quite obvious thing to say. The central contradiction, of course, is going to be around resolving the long-term plan for the Israeli military inside Gaza. The Israelis have said repeatedly, as has Prime Minister Netanyahu on television, that he will push ahead with operations in Rafah, whether there is a ceasefire or not. Hamas has publicly talked about the need for a permanent ceasefire. Trying to bridge that gap seems to be one of the challenges.
And of course, Willem, just to clarify for our...
It seems to me, and especially because the details of this supposed ceasefire are so amorphous at this time, and we have so little detail on what it'll be, it seems to me that a temporary ceasefire like this only gives Israel the opportunity to further entrench itself in the parts of Gaza that it's destroyed, continue building both residential and military infrastructure like it's been doing. We've already gone over this in the last week or so, and yeah, I just hope that the important people are considering that I'm sure they are, right, people? Yeah.
Viewers, where does Israel stand on any conversation that involves the word pause or ceasefire?
It's a really good question, and I think a lot of governments have tied themselves in knots trying to figure out the differential here. Netanyahu, let's just take him at his word as the Prime Minister, he has said that whatever happens, the Israelis will push on through. Speaking to CBS Face the Nation over the course of the weekend, whether there is a ceasefire or not over the next, I should say, 6 weeks or so, let's just say there's going to be 40 days of ceasefire in return for 40 Israeli captives being released. During those 40 days, there would be a cessation of hostilities, there would be a reduction in, let's say, aerial reconnaissance. But after that, Netanyahu's made it very clear that he wants to see what he's called absolute victory. So the idea that this is going to become a permanent ceasefire doesn't seem to be something that Israeli officials publicly are acknowledging as a possibility.
Willem works there for us in occupied East Jerusalem. Thank you.
Okay. Got through that. So, the day is supposedly next Monday, but there's no guarantee on any of that yet. Claiming that Israel is merely defending itself as ahistorical. 100%. Yep, lacks a lot of context.
Palestinians.
So this is the response of Palestinians that are in the occupied West Bank, who are expressing their skepticism on ICJ proceedings.
The occupied West Bank, who've been watching the ICJ proceedings, say that they have little hope that any decision will change their fate.
The world will do nothing. The Arabs will do nothing. The ICJ will do nothing. The Palestinian presidency will do nothing. Nothing good will be decided for the Palestinians.
Our suffering is constant. I never expect a change in the blink of an eye. If the decision is good and positive, the change will never happen immediately. Nothing will happen immediately. Everything needs time. In real life and within the current circumstances, the change will not be easy. Nothing will happen quickly.
Zain Basravi joins us now live from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. So people, certainly where you are, not having too much hope in what might happen at The Hague.
That is correct. Everyone we've spoken to in the past week about these hearings all say the same thing. Moral victories, international dialogue, all of these things are hollow without practical steps and accountability of Israel on the international stage. Joining me now to talk more about this is Saleh Hijazi, the policy coordinator for the boycott divestment.
I'm going to go back just a few seconds because I just wanted to comment on that, because I mean that's 100% the case, right? Like, even if the ICJ and the UN make declarations, unless somebody is willing to step in and do something, unless somebody is willing to impose sanctions or something even more drastic, then that doesn't stop Palestinians from starving today, tomorrow, next week, and into the foreseeable future.
Steps and accountability of Israel on the international stage. Joining me now to talk more about this is Saleh Hijazi, the policy coordinator for the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions National Committee here in Palestine. Sir, thank you very much for your time. One of the things we've heard at the ICJ over and over again at the UN from Palestinian activists like yourself is that the first thing to do as soon as possible is sanction Israel's ability to be able to purchase more weapons, purchase the military tools it is using to injure and kill Palestinians in Gaza, in the occupied West Bank. Do you think these hearings will help towards that? Is it possible? And what might that look like practically?
Yeah, absolutely they help. The BDS movement, the Boycott, Divestment and Sanction movement, has been campaigning for military embargo for over 2 decades now. And in these hearings, affirming that Israel is perpetrating crimes against humanity, including apartheid, genocide, preventing Palestinians from exercising their inalienable rights in a systematic manner, puts legal obligations on states not to aid and abet this illegal situation, not to be complicit in these crimes. There is an emerging consensus now, affirming what the BDS movement has been saying for many years, that sanctions, including a military embargo, must be imposed on Israel. And this is for states' own legal responsibility for them not to be also criminally liable in what the International Court of Justice has said is plausible genocide following South Africa's case. This is law in the Genocide Convention and in public international law. So now states have to look at their own relations with Israel, particularly those that are supplying Israel with weapons. Corporations have to look at their relationship with Israel and Israeli weapons manufacturers and see that they are not complicit in these crimes that are being perpetrated against the Palestinian people, including apartheid and genocide.
Now, when it comes to
Oh my God! I'm sorry. We gotta stop because I gotta like what's the word? I gotta take a second after hearing that. That take was incredible. I mean, wow. And the fact is, this man lives in the West Bank and he speaks more eloquently than most Americans in English, and that take was so like, his face didn't even move. He didn't even get slightly emotional, and he just stated a bunch of facts at people, and it was quite moving for me personally. Okay, I'm back up 2 seconds so I can hear what this guy's asking.
Complicit in these crimes that are being perpetrated against the Palestinian people, including apartheid and genocide.
Now, when it comes to the occupation, the very military occupation, it's not just about dismantling the components of the occupation, it's also a battle of narratives, isn't it? When Israel carries out military activity, acquires all these weapons, kills tens of thousands of Palestinians, it is a pursuit of their national security. But the occupation is very much illegal. When Palestinians, within the international legal framework, very legally resist the occupation in a military capacity, they're labeled terrorists. How do you begin to dismantle that narrative? Could you talk a little bit about the double standards there?
Absolutely. Look, Palestinians have been saying that Israel is imposing a crime against humanity of apartheid for many decades now. This has come to become the world consensus. We've heard over and again by states, legal experts, human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, for example, that Israel is imposing the crime against humanity of apartheid.
I'm sorry, I didn't even notice this while I was watching it. Just to give this man his credit, I had my mic kind of close to my face, and I didn't see his name and his job title. His name is Saleh Hijazi, and it appears that he is the national coordinator for the BDS movement. I would assume in the occupied West Bank.
Has come to become the world consensus. We've heard over and again by states, legal experts, human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, for example, that Israel is imposing the crime against humanity of apartheid on Israel. And now at the ICJ, over the last month, we've been hearing deliberations, first in the South Africa case in genocide, where the South African team have also made the case of apartheid. And in many states, including, for example, the Arab League, the African Union, representing dozens of states, mainly from the global south, see that Israel is a colonizing power. It is imposing apartheid since 75 years, since its establishment, and now is perpetrating genocide. So this is not only Palestinians now saying, this is why the ICJ is so important. We're getting affirmation from states, from legal experts, from UN experts, and so on. And this puts, again, the obligation on these states to ensure that their relationship with Israel is not contributing to these crimes that they themselves have said Israel is perpetrating in the world for. We now see that this is a great opportunity for BDS. We're calling for an escalation of BDS. We've seen boycotts grow. Massive pressure has become on companies like McDonald's and Domino's and others. Puma has pulled out from its contracts with Israel, for example. We've seen divestment, including, for example, ending of military contracts. Ituchu, a large Japanese company, has ended its memorandum of understanding with Elbit Systems, one of the largest Israeli weapons manufacturers. And now states, such as, for example, the Dutch court decision not to transfer components of F-35 components to Israel. 2 states in Belgium, the Wallonia states, suspended 2 arms contracts, for example. We need to see more of this now. This is the moment for BDS to grow, and we need people to support it.
Mr. Saleh Hijazi, Policy Coordinator for the BDS movement, thank you very much for your thoughts here today. So the conversation we're hearing here in Ramallah and across the occupied West Bank is that people here certainly see that this is a moment where there is a shift, an international perception of what the pursuit of Palestinian rights looks like. And they see that shift as something positive, but people say it shouldn't have taken tens of thousands of innocent civilians losing their lives in Gaza for that shift and for that recognition of Palestinian rights.
Same Basrawi there for us in Ramallah. Thank you.
Okay, wow. That one was very difficult for me to interrupt because there was just a bunch of really valuable information being expressed. This is all happening almost real time, and this was from like the last day. And simultaneously, the rest of this stuff I'm going to show you here is all happening.
Wait
for it.
Northern Gaza, where Israeli shelling and snipers have wounded several Palestinians as they waited for aid. Doctors at a Shifa hospital are treating the injured on the floor. Israeli troops targeted crowds waiting for aid to enter Nabulsi roundabout in Gaza City. The civil defense crews have recovered the bodies of Palestinians killed in the latest Israeli airstrikes in Gaza City. At least 10 people were killed in the attacks on several areas of the city on Sunday. Wounded children and others were pulled from the rubble of their destroyed homes in the Asabra neighborhood. Meanwhile, the Royal Jordanian Air Forces carried out an aid drop operation in Gaza, delivering much-needed humanitarian aid. Hundreds of displaced people gathered where the aid was dropped. Much of it fell along the coast. Palestinians had to wade out into the sea to obtain the packages. Tariq Abu Azoum is live for us in Rafah, in southern Gaza. Let's start with the latest strikes from the air, sniping from the ground. It's a day of very gruesome images emerging from Gaza. Take us through them.
Yes, Sammy, another bloody day that took place again as the Israeli forces are even waging more military attacks across the Gaza Strip. And in the past hour, we have been recording more military attacks on the city of Khan Yunis, where at least 5 Palestinians there have reported killed as a part of the ongoing bombardment of the city. Civil defense as well managed to recover 5 dead bodies that were killed previously in a previous Israeli bombardment for the city and being transported to the European hospital later for burial. And we have been also hearing more loud confrontations and fire exchange in the western southern part of the city of Khan Yunis as a part of the ongoing battles raging in the city there between the Israeli military troops and the Israeli fighter as well. We also have been seeing that Nusayrat refugee camp had been widely attacked as well, where a residential building was reduced to the rubble.
War crime. I think I heard a third war crime in there. There was at least 2, though. Attacking apartment buildings and attacking refugee camps. It's the same thing that Russia is accused of doing in Ukraine. Although there's not a lot of... I'm trying to think if there's really a lot of refugee camps in Ukraine right now. There might be, but it's nothing compared to what's happening. I mean, that's not true. I think you get what I'm saying, though. The way that it's being framed out there, we're gonna continue. We still got more to go in this video. We got so much to do. Hopefully, my what do you call it? My point came across.
It's also had been reportedly happened, Sammy, within the past few days, is the ongoing shooting of people who were waiting for humanitarian supplies today in the northern part of Gaza. And for the third day in a row, Palestinians have been reported killed and injured after being exposed to the Israeli fires as they are trying to search for something that will help them to survive in the northern, desperate part of the city.
And Tariq, tell us what you know about this aid drop by the Jordanian Air Force.
Yes, Sammy, just a few hours ago we've been seeing in the sky of Rafah in the southern part of Gaza a Jordanian military plane dropping different and parachuting different humanitarian aids, and it's not yet clear if they are being delivered to the people or to the Jordanian field hospital that had been established within the war.
It seems to me that what's happening is the Jordanians are doing the same math that we were doing. I think it was like last stream or like 2 streams ago, where we calculated kind of like how long Palestinians probably had before people really just started dying of starvation, let alone bombs or disease or anything else like that. And like they're like, no, it's basically now.
Inside Gaza, but we have been seeing crowds of people being gathered in the coastal line of the southern part of Gaza, waiting for such drops to get and to land here in Rafah or even in the coastal line. But in fact, the vast majority of such drops have been landed in the sea, in the middle of the sea, where people cannot really manage to obtain, and this is absolutely terrifying, as people are in a very desperate need for humanitarian supplies in light of the very limited number of humanitarian trucks being allowed.
Yes, a very good point made in chat by AC. Ukraine at least has an actual army. Yep, I mean the pictures of the defense of the two areas are drastically different.
To get into Gaza.
Not that the Ukrainian people aren't currently in distress, because I hope that it doesn't seem like I'm trying to minimize that, just merely pointing out the hypocrisy in the media. Yeah.
The last 2 remaining spots of aid deliveries.
All right, stay with us for a moment, Tariq. We're going to come back to you, but we want to pick up on a line that's been breaking today, and that's Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insisting that a ground invasion in Rafah will happen. Now, he says only a potential ceasefire will only delay that. Israel's army presented its operational plan to the War Cabinet on Sunday ahead of the planned offensive. At least 1.5 million Palestinians are sheltering in Rafah. That's more than half the Strip's population. Let's go to Hamda Salhout, because she joins us now from occupied East Jerusalem. So looking at this plan, is it clear, Hamda, what happens to the people if they go in and invade Rafah in the south, where a lot of Palestinians have been cramming into that southern corner?
There's still a lot of unknowns when it comes to Benjamin Netanyahu and his army's plans for how exactly they're going to evacuate more than 1.5 million Palestinians who are seeking refuge in Rafah, Gaza's southernmost city, what was supposed to be known as the last safe place for Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister says this plan is twofold. The first involves this evacuation, and the second involves the military operation as to how they're going to go in and defeat what he says are the remaining Hamas battalions in Rafah. But despite all of the international criticism, despite all of the condemnation about going into Rafah, the Israelis remain persistent on wanting to go in on the ground. Israeli officials speaking anonymously to Israeli media have said that Perhaps one of the ideas that's being floated is moving the Palestinians to Khan Yunis, but this is an area where a ground invasion is already commencing, where there is relentless bombardment. And in Rafah, there is relentless bombardment, airstrikes, and shelling that is already happening. So it's not really known exactly where they're going to go and how, but the Israeli Prime Minister says they want to move civilians, quote, out of harm's way.
Sorry, Hamda, to interrupt you. We got a...
It's like they're trying to play musical chairs with an entire population. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. I don't know how anybody can tolerate it.
Jump in and go back to Tariq Abu Azoum, because we understand that something has just happened, some kind of strike or something where you are. Take us through what's happening there now.
Yes, Sammy. In fact, as we've been waiting for you to return back to me just to keep reporting about the latest updates on the ground, a sudden loud exploding being heard just a few meters away from Al-Kuwaiti Hospital, from our location right now. It was a loud explosion that took place after a very intensive military movement for the Israeli surveillance and fighter jet drones on the vicinity of the Al-Kuwaiti Hospital. A loud explosion, a loud fire had been heard inside this area. We've been hearing the sound of the missile as it was heading to the target, where everyone, as you can see right...
While I understand the sentiment of what Chatter Sticks over here is saying about there will always be war over there, I find that to be a little bit cynical, and I genuinely hope that's not the case. But I do understand your cynicism slightly. Either way, let's try and be slightly more optimistic. Can we? Can we? I know it's called the Doom Report, but let's try and have some sort of vision of peace in our minds.
Now at the background.
Welcome, FG. Welcome back.
Started to rush to see what is happening, because there is a very big loud explosion that is followed with more smokes rising, as you can see right now on the horizon at the background. We are trying to check to see what will happen next, specifically that the majority of ambulances of Al-Kuwaiti Hospital rushed to the location of the targeting. Now, the attack in fact happened in areas you can right now see very
safe? Do we need to let you go to take cover?
With evacuees. We are trying to be safe. As you right now can see, there is no any safe place in Gaza. Bombardment is in everywhere, even in an area that is supposed to be as a safe zone. We are wearing our helmet, our vest right now. People here are having a kind of a very active movement here in the streets, because it's a rush hour. They are trying to take everything that they are in a very desperate need for before they just return back to the evacuation centers that they are sheltering in. So the attack had been very loud, as you can right now hear. The ambulances are trying to bring, if there's any casualties or victims had been resulted from the Israeli military attack.
And on the point which Hamda was talking about, as you gather perhaps some more information about what's happening around you, Tariq, the threats of a ground invasion that Israel will begin in Rafah. What about the population there? Have they been informed anything about what's going to happen to them? Any evacuation plan, where they'll go and so on?
Well, Sammy, what you can see right now is a very tiny scenario of what might be expected more if there's going to be a military incursion. A military incursion for Palestinians in the south means that there's going to be unrelenting, intensive Israeli bombardment for residential neighborhoods, as what you have been hearing within the past few moments. And it means that there's going to be more bloodshed among civilians and an incredible increase of casualties among civilians. And what Palestinians are terrifying is the collapse of negotiations being made by Qatar and Egypt between Hamas and Israel in terms to reach for a ceasefire that might bring an end for the hostility and release of Israeli captives as well from inside Gaza. But also Palestinians started to practically prepare for the day next. Like some families had evacuated to the central areas of Gaza, which had been also under intense Israeli bombardment. Others refused to leave.
Okay, we get it. That's the end of the video, basically. 10 more seconds. I'm just gonna finish it. I just feel like I'm just gonna see more tragedy, and I feel like I am constantly hitting some sort of internal limit on tragedy.
Because simply they are saying we have nowhere else to go, our house in the north being destroyed, and if we're gonna return back to the north, we will only live on the debris of our destroyed buildings.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Tarek.
Okay. Thankfully,
soon there.
That video included some of the stuff that I was going to watch after it, so I can skip too. Yay! Those two videos were kind of short, but they were both regarding the Jordanian airdrops, but we covered them, so we can move along. Oh, what order do I fucking do this in? Yeah, I guess I'll do it in this order. Oh, this one's gonna be really tough. Trigger warning to everybody watching this piece that we are about to watch together. Details sexual abuse, and it is a little rough.
غششوني على ساحة على غرفة كبيرة كتير.
Hold on. Shit, I forgot. I was so overtaken by this that I forgot it was in subtitles. I'm going to turn the volume down a little bit so I can talk over it and read. Oh, which makes my job so much easier. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. Okay. They placed me in a very big room. I was shocked to see all the female prisoners were stripped naked. After I came out the room, the girls were asking me, "Why were you staring?" I said I was shocked that we were all naked. Amina Hussein was kidnapped by Israeli soldiers on December 28th. She was held in detention centers for 11 days. And in holy shit, that moves fast to read out loud. She was held in prison for another 32 days. Can I go full screen? This is basically the full screen. Sorry. Yeah, where was I? On the night Amina was captured, she left her home seeking shelter, roaming from school to school, finally sheltering at Abu al-Ahlul school. Then Israelis soldiers stormed the school and took Amina along with 9 other women. In this me-exclusive, Amina recounts her experience. An Israeli soldier signaled me to, I thought they were going to give me water. Give us some bottles as a trap, I was explaining to my children. I said to them, they're just going to give me water, and then I'll be back. I didn't have anyone with me apart from my children. They walked me to a tent, and there a female Israeli soldier searched me. She took off all my clothes. When they took me, they said, "You need to see the doctor." I was so scared to get inside the tent, because there was a male soldier behind me. I thought they might kill me, or hit me, or humiliate me. She took off all my clothes except my underwear. She let me get dressed again after she finished searching. I thought they were going to... Sorry, this is moving really fast. Oh god. Reading out this out loud is really difficult. I thought they were going to let me go when I felt a male soldier put a weapon against my back. And he shouted, "Walk, walk." I said, "Where am I going?" Then they put me on a bus. 9 other women were beaten by Israeli soldiers before being blindfolded. And they were put into a bus with no information about where they were going. The soldier said, "Welcome to Israel." I said, "I'm in Israel? Oh my God, what about my children? My children have no one but me." He said, "Your children are fine. That's it." And he said, "Take her." We went to where the Israeli soldiers were, of course, at every place, at every point. They would take us off the bus for searching, search us and make us take off our clothes. They would stick their hands in my chest, inside my trousers, and push until we entered a place. And they would make us walk and hit us, hitting us as long as we were walking on our backs, and I was being hit. I would tell them, "Please wait, please wait." Of course, they didn't speak Arabic, so whatever we would say, they would say, "Shaket." And then they took us to a room. There she took the blindfold off my eyes. I was relieved of it, and I looked around. I see a big speaker. I look around and see cameras inside the room. And the soldiers stared, hitting and beating me, and telling me to undress, screaming. This was a surprise for me to undress again. She made me take off everything, apart from my underwear and my headscarf. And then I stood up. I asked her, "Am I going to stay like this?" So of course they would shout at me and would spit on me and wrong me. Then they let me out. And I stood outside. I was surprised I couldn't understand why I'm naked. It was incredibly cold, so I started screaming about my underwear, asking, "Am I going to stay in this underwear?" No, they would say to me as I was screaming and gesturing with my hands. No. I told her I can't move without my bra. No, she would say. So I begged her and said, "Please." I begged and gestured with my hands because she doesn't understand Arabic, and there was no answer nor communication. Eventually, she threw some joggers at me that were gray, a pants and a t-shirt, and as I was dressing up, she would scream at me and hit me. She would push me and hit me with her hands, hit me with her legs, kick me in her military boots. She would hit hard like it was revenge for her, instead of treating me as a prisoner. Prisoners. For her, it was a punishment. Placed me in a very big room. I was shocked to see all the female prisoners were stripped naked. After I came out the room, the girls were asking me, "Why were you staring?" And I said, I was shocked that we were all naked, and myself too, I was stripped. The soldiers were coming and going as they pleased. When I said I didn't want to strip, she yelled, "Strip." She hit me with a gun. "Strip." I said, "I don't want to. How can I strip while I'm handcuffed?" She would then take off my handcuffs and strip my top. And after that, as my feet were cuffed, said I don't want to strip, she hit me with her boot on my feet and spread them to take me, and then strip searched me, and it was the same thing. It was feeling on my skin, my hands, my feet, my thighs, soles of my feet. She then took off my socks and my shoes. Everything was searched, even my bra. And on the day of Amina's release, an Israeli journalist interviewed. I didn't see who they interviewed. I missed that. Interviewed her on camera, right. The journalist said, "Tell me your full name." But he only filmed from the head up. He said, "Say that you're fine and well." And I did what I was told. Then after he finished filming me, the Israeli soldier hit me and pushed me, and they left us at Kfar Abu Salem. I then asked the soldiers for my belongings. I said, "Run." So I did like everyone else. That's torture? Another war crime? Oh, that was rough for me to read. Got through it. Hopefully it wasn't too painful for everyone, but I do hope it was illuminating. This next one is something that we don't see a lot of, but I think we need to see some of. Now, this is a clash between ultra-Orthodox Jews in Israel with Israeli police. According to ultra-Orthodox Jewish tenets, the state of Israel presents a problem that, and here's the thing, like, I have a lot of criticisms of ultra-Orthodox Judaism, in terms of like the same sort of criticisms I tend to have for theocrats in general, or people who want to live according to one religious text and tell everybody else to do the same. But in this one case, they happen to have the belief that this is wrong, and therefore they are here protesting. Oh shit, I gotta read again. Good, I'm glad I picked all the ones where I have to read. That's good planning. Okay, so the scuffles broke out as the police dragged ultra-Orthodox men away from a protest outside the Supreme Court in Jerusalem. The protesters blocked the streets after potential new draft law could end their exemptions from military service, which is compulsory for Jewish males. We will die, but we will... Oh shit, what did I just do? Oopsies. We will die, but we will not enlist. That's the message from the protest here, says Eli Shabroner. I think I hear someone in that crowd shouting Nakba. I could be wrong, but wow. It's genuinely nice to hear, and I wish there was more Israelis that were protesting this, because they are a small minority amongst a sea of whatever. We're going to continue, sorry.
They don't want us to be Jewish, therefore we prefer to die and not go to the army.
You see, and you have a bunch of young fascists here attacking them for saying their beliefs. The ultra-Orthodox draft exemptions have prompted widespread anger and resentment for the secular majority amidst the ongoing war in Gaza. Well, according to this, is the secular majority. I'd be interested to see that statistic, but in fact, if that is true, that is a good sign. Mounted officers and water cannon vehicles were later deployed to clear the streets. In the past, attempts to overhaul the draft law to include ultra-Orthodox... Whoa. Sorry, I got distracted trying to read comments and a video. Not possible. Okay. In the past, attempts to overhaul the draft law to include ultra-Orthodox drew tens of thousands of ultra-Orthodox to the streets in large violent protests.
This is Democracy Now!
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with all the chats, but there's so much happening and so much for me to keep up with today. But it's good to see Wireless Mike in chat. A punishment for being born where she was born. This is an account of a woman who was... Oh, yeah. That was way back. Damn. Yeah, that was very rough. Very rough. But, okay. Democracy Now! Amy Goodman, a goddess among journalists. This is a piece here titled Ralph Nader at 90 on the genocidal war in Gaza, why Congress is a weapon of mass destruction. This was, I think, like 15 hours ago, or something like that. It happened this morning.
DemocracyNow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Yes, we spend the rest of the hour with Ralph Nader, the four-time presidential candidate who ran on the Green Party, Independent Reform Party, and Democratic tickets. He's a longtime consumer advocate, corporate critic, and today is his 90th birthday. Ralph Nader is the author of many books, including his latest, The Rebellious CEO, and Breaking Through Power, It's Easier Than We Think. And, of course, his 1965 book, Unsafe at Any Speed, The Designed and Dangers of the American Automobile, which focused in part on the safety flaws of General Motors' Chevrolet Corvair. He then won a major settlement against General Motors for spying on him and trying to discredit him, and used the lawsuit's proceeds to start the Center for Study of Responsive Law. Ralph Nader's the son of Lebanese immigrants, has also published the Ralph Nader and Family Cookbook.
I always forget
He's the founder
that.
of the monthly print-only newspaper, the Capitol Hill Citizen.
Just
front
just so you're aware, I managed to get all the videos together today. I only managed to watch like 60% of them, I would say. This is one of the ones I skipped on watching because it was like much longer, and I was hoping that hoping to get to it before now, but here we are.
Page article in the February-March issue is headlined, Collectively, Congress is a Weapon of Mass Destruction. Ralph, welcome back to Democracy Now! And happy 90th birthday.
Well, thank you very much, Amy. Thank you.
Well, it's great to have you with us. Why don't we start off with that very provocative headline on the front page of your newspaper, Congress is a Weapon of Mass Destruction. Explain.
With multiple warheads. This is a very important article because the reverse of what I'm going to point out is an opportunity for people to take back control of their Congress. All of these destructions are very unpopular with the American people, including left-right support for changing the scene on Capitol Hill. So the first destruction is democracy itself. Congress has put itself up for sale or rent. It opposes electoral reform. It is excluding civic groups from public hearings. It doesn't even print public hearings and reports anymore.
Yes. Good night for the third and maybe final time, AC. I do hope you eventually get sleep, as I'm pretty sure you're probably planning on driving at some point here in the next 24 hours.
That is very unpopular with the American people and could be reversed. The second is, as a weapon of mass destruction, literally, the destruction of millions of lives in Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Libya, elsewhere. The empire itself is a weapon of illegal, unconstitutional mass destruction, which is continuing to this day in those invaded countries that didn't threaten us. Third is the Congress is destroying Medicare and Medicaid, turning more and more over to health insurance companies. They're corporatizing Medicare and Medicaid with deceptive ads, single payer to the winds, and we're seeing over half of the Medicare beneficiaries have been lured into Medicare Advantage, which we call Medicare Disadvantage, which is just the usual exploitive giant health insurance policies, denying benefits, narrow networks, and all kinds of other abuses. The Congress has destroyed progressive taxation. It's a grotesque tax full of loopholes, avoidances in return for campaign cash, and something that even Warren Buffett has spoken about strongly. So they've destroyed that and also destroyed the consequence, which is public budgets that can protect people and engage in public services. Congress has also destroyed corporate crime law enforcement, not just with the more recent disaster, letting Boeing and Boeing executives off without parental.
Seriously, though, like, all of these right-wingers are complaining about crime on the streets and zero complaints about white-collar capitalist criminals. And it's such a hypocrisy. It's impossible to listen to.
criminal prosecution. But just imagine, we have a corporate crime wave in this country. It's unbelievable. Billing fraud, pollution violations, workplace violations, and they haven't had comprehensive hearings. They just had a hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee, just a pro forma hearing that's described in the Capitol Hill Citizen. There are 250,000 Americans a year die from, quote, preventable problems, unquote, in hospitals, according to a peer-reviewed Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine study. And they're just doing nothing and collecting money from all these corporate PACs. And then, of course, on child poverty, they didn't extend the child tax extension, rather, the tax benefit, which had cut up to January 2022 child poverty by 40%, and they didn't do that. And by the way, I do make an important distinction, Amy and Juan. That's why I use the word collectively. Congress is a weapon of mass destruction, because there are some good people in Congress, but as a body, it is definitely a weapon of mass destruction. Imagine millions of people being taken off Medicaid as we speak, 45 million Americans experiencing food insecurity, another euphemism for hunger, and the Congress is about to send $14 billion, the genocide tax, for more weapons to Israel to slaughter more Gazan families. I mean, we're talking felonious performance here of the first order. And then the last list, there's a long list, but I'll end with this. Congress is destroying the commons. That is the huge property owned by the people, the public lands, onshore, offshore, the public airwaves, a lot of the internet. All this belongs to the people, but they have turned control over it to the corporations, the media corporations, the oil, gas, timber industry, etc. Now, all of these are very unpopular with the American people.
Ralph,
left-right organization of Congress could turn all this around with less than 1% of the people organized as a Congress Watch group in congressional districts. All of this is discussed and more in Capitol Hill Citizen, and a print-only publication that we're putting out. To get your copy, just go to CapitolHillCitizen.com, and you can get extra copies for your libraries or your discussion group. And for a donation of $5 or more, you'll be mailed first class, quickly, the new issue, the Capitol Hill Citizen, 40 pages, stocked with vibrant, readable print.
God damn it, Ralph. I love so much of like what he has to say, but dude is so old that he still thinks that selling a newspaper is a good plan, and I wish it was a good plan. I want it to be a good plan. Am I wrong, chat? Is it a good plan? Because if I'm wrong, I support it completely. But I just feel like I don't want. I mean, I know he's old. Okay, I'm pretty sure. Ralph Nader's about 90 years old or something like that. So I'm not shocked to hear that this is kind of about where his lane is. And you know what? Maybe he's speaking to the right people. So maybe I should just shut up. But I'm just saying. It's a difficult medium. I struggled to think of the last time I read a newspaper.
Juan, why would you think that you could get a word in edgewise on Ralph's 90th birthday? But we're just gonna
oh my god, I was right. I was right. It's his 90th birthday. I see now I understand the title. It's Ralph Nader at 90 on the genocidal war in Gaza and why Congress is a mass. Okay, now it all makes more sense. I thought it was like the name of the podcast or something. I was like, did Democracy Now! Start a podcast called At 90? Oh, it all makes so much more sense. My brain is finally complete.
Senate. The whole idea of the Capitol Hill Citizen is not just to inform people with non-official journalism that they don't read about, and article after article, like the need to repeal the Insurrection Act that Trump could use to turn the armed forces against the people in this country. It should be repealed. There's an article on that by Bruce Fine, the Capitol Citizen. It's to get more people to become Capitol Hill
Ralph,
citizens.
if I can, I wanted to ask you anyway, we're in the midst of a presidential election year. These kinds of issues you raised when you ran for president, Bernie Sanders raised them when he ran, but we're facing now the Michigan primary coming up and the rest of the election season. In Michigan, some people are pushing for an uncommitted vote to send a message to Biden about Gaza. What do you think about that strategy? And also, as you're looking at this presidential race, what would you urge progressives to do?
I urge all people to vote their conscience. I don't believe in tactical voting inside a two-party duopoly that basically allows very little choice on foreign military policy. What difference is there between the Republican and Democrat? On Wall Street, what difference is there? There's better rhetoric. The Democrats are better with the social safety net. No doubt about that, with Medicare and other safety net programs. But is that enough? So I think, as you say, Juan, people have got to find some way out of this two-party duopoly gulag. They're trapped with these choices, and one way is to do the uncommitted during the primary in Michigan, and I hope it spreads around the country. But also, you know, there are only a few swing states here, so the majority of the American people in red and blue states can vote.
I just had an idea, and I think I might do it. Not now. We're gonna wait. Maybe we will do it. I don't know. When I have a little more time, because I have a ton of stuff I have to do. But I don't know. In like the next month, I'm gonna try and make like flags out of everybody's emojis, and then like I'll make like a fake United Nations, and like I'll just start sticking people's flags on the desks, and it'll do like a whole thing. I don't know. I'm riffing right now. Don't listen to me. I'm going back to this.
For a third party, they can vote for the Green Party, which has a marvelous agenda that the Democratic Party should have picked up on long ago. So people should vote their conscience. I believe that very strongly. That's what Eugene Debs used to recommend, the great labor leader in the early 20th century.
I wanted to go back in time with me and Juan, because we're also celebrating our 20th anniversary of Democracy Now! When we took you, Ralph, as a presidential candidate, onto the floor of the Republican convention. This was in Philadelphia. We were broadcasting from the Independent Media Center. May have been the first time in U.S. history a candidate for president held an impromptu but well-attended press briefing.
Like in order to get your flag, you're gonna have to like do certain things. Like that's what I've come to the conclusion of. Like nothing crazy, but like you're gonna have to reach certain goals to like enter the Galactic Nation, like United Nations. So I don't know what those goals will be, but I will keep you posted.
Floor of another party. We'd ask Ralph to come to the convention, provide commentary and analysis as the voice of an outsider who's been excluded from the political process in many ways. Let's go back to 2000.
Well, I want to observe the thing in action. It's hard to believe when you see it reported. You have to see it to believe it. I mean, this is the most spectacular display.
Is that skepticism from BCAT? Because I just feel like we can't allow just anybody into the Galactic UN, you know? Like you have to meet a certain threshold. Going to space, that's one. That's one.
Political cash register politics with corporate fat cats in the history of the country. And it's always good to see the state of the art shamelessly paraded on national TV.
What's your message to the delegates here?
My message is to go home and rethink what they're doing to the country when they sell politics to corporate fat cats in return for political favors. And that's what I say to the Democrats as well. Our democracy is being hijacked by large commercial interests against the interests of everyday people. And we've got to have political reform in this country. I'm very sorry to see John McCain
who had millions of supporters standing for political reform, morph himself into George W. Bush today?
Sir, in some states you're drawing at 7 or 8%. Do you think, would you be the spoiler if this race is close?
You can't spoil a political system that's spoiled to the core. We need a new political reform movement in this country. It's not going to come.
Jesus Christ. Wait, what did that say? Yeah. August 2009 was that? No, 2000. That's 25 years ago.
Political reform movement in this country. It's not going to come from the Democratic or Republican parties.
So that was Ralph Nader.
Oh, not skepticism. I just have a... Okay, if you say so. If you say so.
In the summer of 2000 in Philadelphia, on the floor of the Republican convention, everyone, the journalists migrated. He basically held a news conference there. We brought him on to present commentary. Ralph, you ran for president 4 times. Your thoughts on what you call the duopoly, and at this point, when people are talking about this election, which could ultimately be between Biden and Trump, calling it the most important presidential election perhaps in history. What are your comments on that?
Well, what you did in 2000, Democracy Now!, has never been done before or since. You basically got me inside the Republican convention to provide some sort of counterpoint and alternative to the mass media that was there. I was as astonished as anybody. And it didn't take long for me to be escorted out of the convention center. But you got the job done. And what is the job?
Yeah.
The job is to
Democracy
give more
Now!
voice.
Absolutely deserves credit for that too. I mean, it's incredible what Amy has done, and considering Ralph is doing it, I'm gonna continue what his brain is doing, which is to praise Democracy Now! They were started in 1966 as an independent news program intended to feature international journalists, grassroots leaders, independent analysts, as well as ordinary people directly affected by world events and U.S. policy. Hosted by Amy Goodman, Juan Gonzalez, and Neiman Sheikh. I always say her name. I know I say her name messed up. But every time it switches over to this old footage, I feel like I keep looking down at the settings to think that, because I keep thinking that my settings are like on 360p or something. It's like 30 years ago.
And choices on the electoral ballot to the American people. This is crazy what's going on. The gap between the Democrats and Republicans has narrowed tremendously from the days of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the Republican Party, say in the 1930s. The Democrats have rhetoric on environmental issues, labor issues, but they don't really use their muscle in Congress. And they should have long ago landslided the Republican Party, which is the worst ever in history on so many issues that have been reported by you and others. So what do people do? First of all, they have to organize Congress Watch lobbies back home between elections so that elections become more meaningful, so that people start seeing that on the table is corporate crime enforcement, the end of corporate welfare, the establishment of arms control treaties, and a Department of Peace that Dennis Kucinich is supporting. He's now running for Congress again from Ohio.
And here's the thing.
There's so many...
And not to... Like, kind of... I'm not really, actually. And this sign's really helping me, I think, make my point here. But the coverage of the Democratic primary right now is non-existent, right? And whenever it is, it's like I see the numbers of how the votes went, and I'm just like, who are these people? I haven't heard about them one time. And in the very videos in which you're like looking at the numbers, like I don't think I saved them because they were so nonsense, but like I was watching, I think it was like about the Michigan Democratic primary, and you got Joe Biden versus some guy named Phillips. I'm like, who the fuck is Phillips? Like, I had to Google him. I literally had to Google the man, and it was crazy. I felt like I was in like the Twilight Zone, right? He's polling garbage, and the media keeps playing like he's like, he's gonna actually do well in the general right now. But I feel like if they covered any of these people, they'd just be beating him. Like, literally, if you gave anybody free media attention like they usually do, like, which they're definitely not doing right now. Which is why I definitely support the people who are saying vote, what's the word? Starts with an I. Anybody? My brain just broke. I'm gonna look at chat. No worries, FG, I promise. No pressure. Take your time. I was just scrolling through. There are a ton of emojis in chat. Tons of them. Just look at their style and you'll know it's not the resolution. Anyways, I forget what I have to look it up now then. If nobody in chat knows, I have to look it up. Uncommitted. It's a U. Fucking hell. Why did I say I? Uncommitted. Yeah. That's why I think voting uncommitted in this primary is a must for anybody who's still got a primary vote left to cast. Because, like, I feel like we need to redo it. We can do it in, like, however many. I feel like we just speed run. We just need to speed run a primary, okay? That's all I'm saying. Because this shit is nonsense. Vote independent, says BCAT. I feel like uncommitted says more. Although, it's the same message, but I just feel like having it be more consistent. I've heard uncommitted being touted, not independent, up to this point. I'm trying to think of who it is. Was it Marianne Williamson right now? Is, what's his name still running? I mean, I don't know. I just think we need to have an actual primary, because like they did give like RFK Jr. more like press than any of these actual like Democratic candidates, right? That are supposedly running. Okay, sorry. All right. Going back to Cali.
Areas that were put on an effort in 2022, which we called winningamerica.net. People can go and see it, showing that so many of the major concerns of the American people, it doesn't matter whether they label themselves conservative or liberal, when they are trying to feed their families, when they're trying to get through the day where they live, work, and raise their families, ideology of divide and rule doesn't quite work with them. But we tried to do that with winningamerica.net. We put the whole range of progressive policies that have huge majoritarian support. That's the hidden story. There's a lot of left-right support for a living wage, for universal health insurance, for cracking down on corporate crime, for changing the whole ridiculous tax system.
Ralph, Juan wants to get one more question in before the end of the show. Juan?
Yeah. Ralph, I wanted to ask you about the Israel's war on Gaza. You had a recent column headline, what the mass media needs to cover regarding Israel-Gaza conflict. Could you lay out, we only have about a couple of minutes, if you could lay out your key points.
Well, the key points is that, and this is not very often recognized, is there are 5 federal laws that the U.S. and Israel are violating by unconditional and unconstitutional support of this illegal genocidal war in Gaza. The Foreign Assistance Act, the Arms Export Control Act, the U.S. War Crimes Act, the Leahy Law Protecting Human Rights, and the Genocide Convention Implementation Act. And I think we have to bring the focus back home. We're the arch enabler of this massive slaughter in Gaza, which seems to have no end, and is over 100,000 people and children dead so far, and many, many more dying by the hour. There's a huge undercount of the fatality toll.
Yeah.
So I urge people to listen to Democracy Now's in-person interviews of these doctors. And I just read, Amy, the article you and Dennis Moynihan wrote about the on-site in the hospitals being blown apart witnesses by the doctors who have come back to the United States and Canada. We've got to get the support for the senators who have already, 5 senators have called for direct aid bypassing Israel, direct U.S. humanitarian aid with international organizations in Gaza right now.
Ralph, we're going to have to leave it there. We want to thank you so much.
Nader is sharp at 90. I was going to say the exact same sort of sentiment just now, because I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, Nader's a shining example of age not being a determining factor to your views and like perspective. Same thing for Amy, but she's a lot younger. She's Gen X, I think, like Sam Cedar or somebody like that. What am I doing here? Okay, that was a good interview. I felt like I was struggling to interrupt anything that was happening because it was just so good. I'm just gonna finish it.
I hate to cut you off on your 90th birthday, but what else is new? Ralph Nader, longtime consumer advocate, corporate critic, former presidential candidate. Happy 90th birthday. Founder of the print-only monthly newspaper, Capitol Hill Citizen. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
That is silly. That's very silly. Okay. What do we got next? That might be... Is that it on Palestine for now? Nope. Nope. Let me look. How much of this should we do? Do we need to do right now? What time is it? It's 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've only been going for like an hour and a half though, and I feel spry, so I'm just gonna keep going. I'm gonna plow ahead. This is a video from I think 12 hours ago now. Sorry, I'm trailing off. I feel like I slept. Hold on, I need a sip. I need a hydration here. Okay, that's better. Okay, the next video is entitled "Searching for Food in Gaza is Becoming More Dangerous." I think that's something we know intrinsically, but I'm just gonna keep looking at as if it's burning sun, and we're trying to prove to our mom that it's not bad for our eyes, but maybe that's a bad analogy.
A crowd in the northern part of the Strip came under fire from guns and tanks as they gathered to obtain flour on Al Rashid Road west of Gaza City. News agency footage was released on Monday, a day after the incident. Israeli forces have fired on crowds trying to get aid several times in the past. The UN's food agency says it was forced to suspend aid deliveries in the north because of...
Do I have... Yes, it's freeze-dried water up here. Yep. Yeah, multiple systems in which to purify water. Not going to go into the gory details of it. Let's just say once in a while I got to make a stop somewhere down on Earth to get supplies. Lately I've been inundated by Elon Musk satellites, so trying to get into low Earth orbit is a bit of a task.
Flour on Al Rashid Road west of Gaza City. News agency footage was released on Monday, a day after the incident. Israeli forces have fired on crowds trying to get aid several times in the past. The UN's food agency says it was forced to suspend aid deliveries in the north because of this violence. And some Israelis have blocked humanitarian aid from getting into the Gaza Strip. The group lay in front of a border crossing with Egypt, preventing trucks from moving.
This is serious, and you're talking about Bear Grylls? Really, FG? Bear Grylls? That's what we've gone to? any other time, literally any other time, it would be. I mean, I'm laughing inside, but this video is so rough. That's wow. But yes, I mean, if you will, maybe a Bear Grylls type of situation. But it's more elegant than that. Okay, more elegant than a Bear Grylls, to be clear. And I'm not jumping into any creeks naked for no good reason, or eating bugs. We already discussed yesterday that eating locusts is bad for you, so. Incorrigible, chat. Incorrigible. Mowing up my moderator. Thank you. Alright, back.
To get into Gaza.
Going 10 seconds back.
In the north because of this violence. When some Israelis have blocked humanitarian aid from getting into the Gaza Strip, the group lay in front of a border crossing with Egypt, preventing trucks from moving as they queued to get into Gaza. Aid trucks are meant to be checked in Egypt before they cross over. Well, the spokesperson of the UN's humanitarian office says a recent medical evacuation convoy was also stalled by Israeli forces for several hours.
Despite prior coordination for all staff members and vehicles with the Israeli side, the Israeli forces blocked the WHO-led convoy for many hours the moment it left the hospital. The Israeli military forces, the Israeli military forced patients and staff out of ambulances and stripped all paramedics of their clothes. 3 Palestinian Red Crescent Society paramedics were subsequently detained, although their personal details had been shared with the Israeli forces in advance, while the rest of the convoy stayed in place for over 7 hours. 1 paramedic has been released, and we appeal for the immediate release of the 2 others and all other detained health personnel.
Okay, I think that's about it. We need to hear pretty clear. Another war crime attacking humanitarian aid, civilian humanitarian aid. That is illegal. I have a good reason. Well, thank you. I think you're talking about me. You could be talking about somebody in chat. I'm not sure. Let's see here. Yes, I was glad to clear that up. It's a pleasure. What's next? We already watched that. We already basically watched this in a different video. We are going to skip another one. Yay! I only made it 1:45 through this one, and we get to skip one because we already did it. Ah, oh, what a treat! So glad I have duplicate in here. I thought I had way more stuff to deal with. You wouldn't believe how much stuff I've stuck into this watch list. It's crazy. Okay. This one I found, and it is from more recently. It's from, I guess, a similar timeline, but it's slightly more recent than the videos we were watching. It's entitled, hold on, pause. It is entitled Gaza Crisis. Hamas and Israel downplay Biden's ceasefire optimism, which is a very gloomy sort of title, so buckle up. It's only 1:52 though, so we should be able to get through it together. Whoops, wrong screen. There we go. Wait, you were talking to me regarding jumping into lakes. Ah. Okay. Yes. Let's do it.
These desperate cries cannot be heard by the Jordanian crews flying high above Gaza. Each airdrop triggers a frantic rush along the beach as Palestinians rush into the ocean to gather anything that's salvageable. The UN warns the flow of aid by land has slowed to a trickle and says its own convoys and those of other agencies are being blocked by Israel.
8 convoys have come under fire and are systematically denied access to people in need. Humanitarian workers have been harassed, intimidated, or detained by Israeli forces.
We just watched that very speech.
There are few signs of the breakthrough needed to get there.
We have seen a positive trajectory by the sheer fact that the meetings are taking place, but we have yet to reach a final agreement.
Hamas has long insisted that any hostage deal must lead to a permanent ceasefire. Israel refuses to compromise on its goal of toppling the militant group. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insisted there's enough American support to continue the Israeli military campaign for another year, until complete victory. U.S. President Joe Biden suggests otherwise.
They're going to lose support from around the world, and that is not in Israel's interest.
Meanwhile, millions of displaced Gazans are on borrowed time.
Goodness, such difficult images. You want a vacation at Space Lake? That's hilarious. I feel like I want to create something just based upon that. That is a good one. That's funny. Alright,
With the UN warning 1/4 of the population.
By the way, this video is from Global News. I believe that's another Canadian broadcasting company. I realize I'm subscribed to like every news channel that has like an English broadcast on YouTube that has any amount of reputation at all.
Is on the brink of famine. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Okay, we got through that. Now, to even more recent-ish stuff. Well, actually, these two are tied together. One's more recent than that video. The other one's not. But, actually, I take it back. The one we just watched was from a couple hours ago. That is my bad. That was literally 2 hours ago. Not as I said, I think maybe 12 or 13 hours. It's wrong. So sorry. At least I'm checking myself mid-stream. I try to as much as possible. As I think most of you know. This one is going to be entitled Biden Faces Primary Vote Protest, which happened about 15 hours ago.
This morning, President Biden faces a major test in Michigan's Democratic primary. Not from another candidate, but from a protest vote organized by a key subset of voters angry over
This
his
is
support
quiet.
of Israel and its war against Hamas.
This is quiet. Hold on. Sorry, chat. I just realized how quiet this is.
I'm very concerned about the direction this country is taking as far as Gaza. I can't throw my full support behind President Biden.
As the civilian death toll mounts in Gaza, Biden has seen support plunge among Arab Americans, especially in Michigan, home to the largest Arab American community in the U.S.
I want to hear a firm commitment, one, to push for a ceasefire. I'm voting uncommitted.
Michigan's Democratic governor predicts today's protest vote will be sizable.
They want to get at least 10,000 votes. Do you think they'll reach that?
I think that that's possible, yeah.
The implications could be huge in a Biden-Trump rematch this fall. Biden beat Trump in Michigan by 154,000 votes in 2020, and now an estimated 206,000 registered voters in the state are Muslim. Today's primary comes after a horrifying act of protest in Washington, D.C. An active duty U.S. airman has died after setting himself on fire outside the Israeli embassy. In a video, 25-year-old Aaron Bushnell is heard saying, quote, "I will no longer be complicit in genocide. I'm about to engage in an extreme act of protest." He was then heard screaming, "Free Palestine." President Biden says he hopes a new ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas can take effect by next Monday.
Ramadan's coming up, and there's been an agreement by the Israelis that they would not engage in activities during Ramadan as well, in order to give us time to get all the hostages out.
For the Republican candidates in Michigan today, polls show Nikki Haley trailing former President Trump.
The more news that you watch, the more it feels like news is like react content. Like, it's so crazy. Like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills right now. I could swear I've seen all of this footage before, and maybe we've watched it before. I'm just forgotten somehow. Or someone else watched it, but it all feels Maybe I have watched this on stream before. Have I? Watch out.
By more than 50 points, Haley claims despite Trump's early primary wins, he's not gaining enough support.
Okay, we're not going to go through all of this minutia of how Nikki Haley's going to lose. That's good enough for me there. Next one is much better. Or at least I enjoyed watching this one a lot more.
And I'm just wondering,
But now that I think about it,
let's say
due to the timing of that that video, like when it was put out, there's no way that I watched it on stream earlier. So it must have either been on somebody else's stream, or like it's just that everybody's using the same footage everywhere. Red faces in chat. Hopefully that's not directed at me. Next video. Whoops. See, it's entitled "Students at the University of Texas, Dallas protest the visit of Lockheed Martin Senior Fellow." This was great. I loved this video. I'm not gonna lead up to it anymore. Play. Go web go.
And I'm just wondering, as let's say an intern working on, like as a systems engineer or a software engineer, I don't know if you'd be able to speak on this, but would you be working on a small part of those systems? Are you working on projects with business impact? Like, would I be kind of doing like a small little side project, or would I be able to directly contribute to the murder of Palestinian children?
Good question. That you have a very impressive resume. During the 18 years that you spent working on the F-22 jets and the years since that you worked on the F-35, if you were to give an estimate, how many children do you think you've killed?
Crickets.
I don't even know how to answer that question, nor will I give it a shot.
Wait, hold on. Hold. Again. Let's hear that again. It's beautiful silence.
Nor will I give it a shot.
Thank you. Hey boss, as a business major, company.
Wait.
I don't even know how to. I don't even know how to answer. Killed. 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 I don't even know how to answer that question, nor will I give it a shot.
Thank you. Hey boss, as a business major, company culture is a big factor when looking for internships, especially at a project manager position where you can spend most of your time working with others. What can you share about company culture and working with a team of genocide supporters and murderers?
That's another one I'm not going to answer because that's not who I work with.
It's short and sweet, to the point. This next one.
Starlink.
Separation confirmed. Stop spoilering. Oh, look at them spoilering my plans. I was going to try and lead this up. How dare you? Whatever. I'm skipping it. I am exhausted. We're going straight through this. Because there's so much on my list I feel like that I want to try and cover. So let's hit this up. Who cares what time it is? This is a video entitled Ukraine says Russia is using Starlink. How Elon Musk's satellites work.
Elon Musk's low-orbit satellite service has been...
Oh, that's loud for my face and ear holes. Fuck. I hate how all these videos have different volumes. Hold on, I gotta check levels on everything now, because that was offensive to me. Okay, that seems reasonable. Over here. This is my life. Every day. These satellites, they're orbiting around. They're blocking my view of Earth, causing me problems, running into the space station. I mean, it is a disaster, let alone the implications for humanity. Not to make it all about me.
On their own. As Musk says...
One's in chat. Perfect. Good. Start this video with it, so I'll probably have to clip this right here. This video we're watching is done by Wall Street Journal. I try to credit everyone I watch. If I ever forget, somebody tell me, okay? I don't like to leave anybody out in that way. Okay, back to the video. Trusting Russia on something like this is the same thing as trusting Israel on what the IDF is doing, or something like that. I can't think of a better analogy, honestly. Space junk. Yes, no, I love that. I can't remember if I commented on it, but I was laughing to myself over that. That was a good one. Wait. That's a lot. That's more than I thought there'd be. Hold on. RIP my keyboard. A slightly bigger country than I thought too, though. But since I've already started down this road, I'm trying to do the math in my head right now, but I genuinely need a calculator for it because my head is not doing the math. But it's something like 1 for every 10,000 or 50,000, something like that. No, it wouldn't be 50. It would be a starting with a 10. What was that number? I can't remember what the number was. God damn it. Hold on, I gotta go back, chat. 42,000. Okay. Don't have to go back. I lied. Wait. Oh, it's even... Really? Is that right? Man, sometimes I just don't do the math fast enough. As fast as I would like. Okay, so just did the math, and for every 1,000 people in Ukraine, there is a Starlink satellite. Think about that. Like, aside from the regular infrastructure for internet, there's 1,000 of these things floating around the country, or 1 for every 1,000 people in the country of 43 million people. Think about that. That's crazy. That's a ton. Alright, sorry, I'm back. We're back. Okay, focus in. Point out that seems to be a big loophole, right? If you have a list, then there must be a way to identify you by some metric or whatever it might be. And I don't know what sort of level of verification they might have for something like that, but like they could potentially like steal like your credentials, or if in the case of war you were killed, and just basically steal your device. Maybe it's linked to your device. I don't know. There's probably a bunch of ways to get around something like that, and so yeah, I'm honestly no expert on communications like that, so don't take my word on all of that, but that's just my inkling on it. The jackal cackle. Is that me? Do I cackle like a jackal? Okay. This is staying in the same sort of trying to stay within the same sort of framework of what we were just talking about. This video, let's see, what this come out. Sorry, trying to keep everything up to date. This is a TRT World video entitled U.S. defense stocks flourish amid Russia-Ukraine conflict. It came out, whoopsies, no, don't do that. 15 hours ago. So yeah, U.S. defense stocks flourish amid Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Since the start of the Ukrainian war, industrial production in the U.S. defense and space sector has increased by 17.5%. European governments, including Poland, Germany, and other NATO eastern flank countries, have placed orders worth billions of dollars. Their shopping list includes fighter jets, helicopters.
Oh, I know exactly what Mona Up is talking about. Or whatever it is. It's so terrible. Oh my god. I gotta go back. That's hilarious. I had no idea what she meant by Jackal Cackle, but now I know 100%.
Ukrainian war, industrial production in the US defense and space sector has increased by 17.5%. European governments, including Poland, Germany, and other NATO eastern flank countries, have placed orders worth billions of dollars. Their shopping list includes fighter jets, helicopters, tanks, and other hardware. In 2023, spending by European countries went up by 13% to $345 billion, almost a third higher than a decade ago. Poland $30 billion orders for Apache helicopters, high-mobility artillery rocket system HIMARS, M1A1 Abrams tanks, and other hardware from the US. Germany will spend over $20 billion to buy 35 US-made F-35 fighter jets and 60 Chinook helicopters and related equipment, as it ramps up military spending from $50 billion in 2021 to over $100 billion in 2022, following Russia's war in Ukraine. Romania's government increased its 2024 defense budget by almost 45% over 2023, reaching roughly $20.8 billion to accommodate major weapons purchase from the US. This surge in demand has created thousands of jobs, and production lines have spread across 40 US states. But the economic benefits are not limited to the defense industry. The US has become the world's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas. The disruption of Russian gas supplies has meant Europe has turned to America for its gas. This has led to significant investments in new LNG projects, boosting the US economy even further. Foreign direct investment in the US has seen a nearly 50% increase, with European companies attracted by the access to cheap and abundant energy.
To defeat Russia, we have to make it impossible for them to economically be able to afford this war. One means of doing that is making LNG cheaper, or exporting more LNG from countries such as the United States, which makes the demand for Russian LNG less.
The Biden administration sees the funding allocated for Ukraine as a way to rebuild America's defense industrial base. It not only supports jobs, but also jumpstarts and expands production lines for weapons and...
Okay, yeah, that's basically the end. I think that's about all we need to hear from that. But while we're sitting here, switch screens real quick. Read some things like a marionette. Yeah, when he opens his mouth, he looks creepy as hell. She's hanging out with Morbius. Oh, Morbius is okay. That's the first thing I've heard about him. I'm so glad to hear that. That's great. Okay. See, I told you guys. Just gotta stay positive. And it's probably just, you know, hopefully getting something. Hopefully something's just going good for him, you know, or whatever. But while we're here talking about all of this, can I make this? I can't make this graph bigger, which I hate. Hate that. I guess I could crop it, but I'm not gonna deal with that. I feel like you can all withstand it. But if you look at this graph, this is how much money like the Lockheed Martin Corporation has made over the last like 15 years. So if we start from here at 72, and then at the max recently of 486, that's about exactly 7 times. So if you put $100,000 into it, you would have ended up with $700,000 in the last 15 years if you'd invested in the Lockheed Martin. So just remember how many people have benefited from war crimes and genocides and things like that. So okay, and that's in no way saying that's a good thing. I hope that's completely clear. I am criticizing that. You could have put your money somewhere else, instead you chose to put it in there, because stocks don't go up unless people are buying them, or unless they're buying them back from themselves. So that is one way to artificially inflate a stock, is by buying it, as in corporate buybacks, which we've heard less of in the news, but are definitely in full force, still a thing, not a past tense sort of situation. What is left on recenter stuff? What time is it? Correct. I'm glad you agree on whatever it was. And I'm sorry about whatever it is those red faces are about. We're almost to a point where we might have a video that's kind of cathartic to watch. Or at least it was for me. But I feel like maybe I should save it for another stream, because I have so much other stuff I want to do. I just don't know how long chat you guys can hold out for right now. I know it's getting late. Not that that's the only reason for me to make these videos. It certainly isn't. I'm just saying it's nice to have people to be doing this all with. It's one of the major benefits of this all for me. Okay. This is just another video on the same sort of topic, but from another perspective, or at least just covering a different particular.
Special military.
This is another TRT World video. It's entitled "Russia Pulls Trigger on Kalashnikov Economy," and Kalashnikov is referring to the AK-47, referring to the increased military spending that they are currently doing, which this video goes into.
As Russia's special military operation in Ukraine enters its third year, Moscow's defense spending has grown to record levels.
Morbius Dragon, welcome to the Galactic Stream Nation. First time chatter. Hard to step away for a bit. Yeah, just had to. Oh, had to. Sorry. Did not read that properly. Welcome. It's good to see you. There were conspiracies flying around YouTube chats about your whereabouts. Totally understandable. Yes, absolutely. Seems like everybody's on the same page.
It now accounts for about a third of all budget expenditure. That is in line with the country's current priorities, but also reflects the transformation of the economy where the defense sector is playing a more dominant role. But the military-industrial complex is more than just consumables. It provides for the development of related areas, including technology and construction, that will remain strengthened after the Ukraine operation is over.
It is therefore not correct to say that Russia is a so-called Kalashnikov economy, in other words, almost entirely dependent on military-industrial spending. It is significant, but it is not entirely dependent on that.
Increased defense allocations in Russia have also meant a redistribution of wealth. Regions where the military-industrial complexes are based have received enormous injections, leading to greater spending by local consumers.
These regions.
So it sounds like to me that the military spending in Russia is creating more inequality in their country as well. So, wow, great stuff. TRT World has so many fantastic little stories that they do, and it seems to hit all sorts of different places. I don't watch all of them, obviously. I don't want to just be one-sided and like just go with one source. That'd be sort of, I think that'd be boring and monotonous for not just myself but everybody else. But man, I'm just trying to give them props, because like there's stuff like this is necessary to have journalism in all these places.
Russia.
I think someone mentioned RT earlier. I don't know if I'm subscribed to them. I feel like I used to watch their videos, used to be recommended to me, and at some point they just stopped getting recommended to me, and I never resubscribed. Although I did follow, who am I? What's her name? For some reason I want to call her Amy Goodman, but I know that's not. Empire Files with Abby Martin. There we go. Same number of syllables. I think that's why That's why I get them confused in my head. They also have very good takes, both of them. Fantastic journalists. Now we're talking about Abby Martin. Okay, sorry, we're focusing.
Previously have been kind of below average in terms of growth and below average in terms of income, but now starting to report higher growth than average, higher than the national average, because of this injection of money and the broadening effect. It's like a ripple effect. You put money into a factory to make something for the military, but that money ends up in the broader community.
The national workforce is also feeling the benefits. In February, Russian President Vladimir Putin reported the creation of over 500,000 new military-related jobs.
We see that the number of middle class started to grow, which is not exactly the Western style middle class. It's more the people connected to the state, to the military economy, and also the families of those who serve in the army. So they get this additional funds, and they are feeling better.
In 2022, there
you don't
was
even
talk of
wireless mic. You don't even get recommendations to channels that you subscribe to. Sometimes it's weird that way. Yeah, it's a feature bug, right? It's a feature bug. Good old YouTube feature bug, shadow banning. Okay. Back to life.
International sanctions onslaught that would kill the Russian economy. In 2023, the narrative was that restrictions on all exports would destroy the national budget. Experts here in Russia say none of that has happened.
We have been talking about that, though, and I know that while Russia may be claiming that none of that's happening, I mean, we already made clear that because of the warming climate, like, there are tons of issues with Russia's plan to be in the Arctic Circle, with things like those massive methane explosions that were happening in the tundra. I assume are still happening. Although I haven't looked for more new videos of them, and I wonder if they are still happening. But you gotta assume that they're at least concerned about that, rethinking and building massive billions of dollars worth of infrastructure. Although I know they're still attempting a lot of different things. I saw a video recently regarding shipping ports being built up there because of melting ice. It's for the first time they can do a whole lot of exploration impossible before without what's it called, icebreakers and things of that nature. Bad Lefty, good to see you. Wow. Okay, everybody's showing up right now, middle of the night. Okay, let's finish this video.
All these factors are slowing the Russian economy, but they have not collapsed it. And the ongoing talk of the so-called Kalashnikov economy is unlikely to derail Russia's adaptability and resilience either. Dasha Chernysova, TRT World, Moscow.
Okay. What was it going to do next? Oh, yes. Do I start that now? Or do I hit up these? I feel like that one's unnecessary. No. Sorry, chat. I'm making live decisions on what we should watch out of my massive list of stuff that I thought, hey, this might be interesting to watch. Let's start. How do we start it with this? Oh, yeah, here we are. Let's start with, yeah, actually, I think I have them lined up pretty decently. Almost. Yeah, perfect. Okay, fine. I was prepared. I was somehow prepared for streaming. I know, chat, it's ridiculous. I did research before the stream, not on the stream. Just a little bit. Just a tiny little bit.
Thousands of junior.
So we watched a video previously, I think a couple of days ago, regarding a doctor strike in South Korea, and that I had kind of warned about, like, the way that they were doing the protest, because I think they were coming at it from the wrong angle. But I think I'm going to try and provide more context to that today, because I saw another video on it, and it seemed like it definitely had some amount of momentum in South Korea. So this is another video from about 19 hours ago. So much love in chat. I'm barely able to keep up with it, but it's so good to see. So good to see all of you. Let's see here. Fix the screen.
Thousands of junior doctors in South Korea have been launching a strike for a week to protest government plan to increase the number of medical students. Their collective action has undermined the operations of their hospitals with the cancellations of planned surgeries and other medical practices. Their strikes are now at a critical moment, as the South Korean government said they must return to work by this Thursday, or they would face suspensions of their doctors' licenses and indictment by prosecutors. At the heart of the dispute is a government plan to raise South Korea's medical school admission cap by 2,000 from next year. Government officials have been saying it's urgent to have more doctors to deal with the country's rapidly aging population. But the doctors have said medical schools cannot handle that many new students. They also say doctors locked in greater competition could conduct unnecessary medical treatment, thus posing a burden on public medical expenses. It's unclear whether the government would really suspend the medical licenses.
I would point out that most of these guys are kind of middle-aged looking to me. I could be wrong. I'm just guessing, but I would say most of these guys seem to be about 40.
Of the striking doctors and get them to be indicted even if they refuse to return to work.
And that might be generous, considering that old guy that just came by. He looked like he was about 110. Okay.
Thursday. Some experts say the government will likely end up punishing some of the strike leaders because of concerns about further burdens on hospital operation.
And that's the problem with our capitalist system that makes healthcare a commodity, which South Korea have embraced. Oh, I forgot to watch this. Oh, I hate me. Hate me sometimes. All right, we're gonna quickly watch this. Very quickly. This is a video entitled "Macron opened the door to send troops to Ukraine" from Reuters. And I just wanted to watch this one previously with the rest of the Ukraine stuff, but I somehow screwed this up. That provides context to the way that different nations and media are either covering or reacting to the situation in Gaza versus the situation in Ukraine, which are very situations that are on their face easily evaluatable as being like synonymous with one another, right? Easily, you know, like it's not hard to compare the two and be like, oh, this is really similar situation. Like, they might speak different languages and be in different countries, but wow. Anyway.
French President Emmanuel Macron opened the door on Monday to sending troops to Ukraine after a meeting with European leaders that aimed to send Moscow a message of Western resolve over support for Kyiv. Speaking to reporters after the talks, Macron said while no consensus was reached on deployment, France could not rule out a potential later need for it to ensure Russia does not win the war.
We should not exclude that there might be a need for security, which then justifies some elements of deployment. But I've told you very clearly what France maintains as its position, which is strategic ambiguity that I stand by. Nothing should be excluded to pursue our goals.
Later, Slovakia's Prime Minister said several NATO and EU members were considering sending soldiers to Ukraine on a bilateral basis. A White House official told Reuters that the United States had no plans to send troops to fight in Ukraine and that there were no plans to send NATO troops either. The meeting in Paris was called by Macron to discuss how to ramp up material support for Ukraine, as French advisors warned of what they called an escalation in Russian aggression.
Okay, I think that's enough. We've heard the general context of that video, and I think what's clear, because no other NATO countries have, let alone in Ukraine, none of them have offered troops to help like stop the massacre in Israel. In fact, I feel like saying that is like, you know, subversive, to steal a word from, I feel like, many. But yeah, unbelievable. And that's enough, I think, from that video. We're gonna go right back to dealing with this. I hate that I even had to go back to that right there, because that was so disheartening in a lot of ways. But all right, back to South Korea. This video, hold on, before I even do this, I'm going to read some chats, see what's going on here. Sorry guys, I keep forgetting about you, and that's my bad. I love you, and I value you. BCAT, I actually went to a few MLH lives a couple weeks ago. Why am I not understanding what you're trying to say? I feel like somehow I am missing the context of this. There's so many chats. Mike, let's see. I figure you're just checking. Dang it. It's seriously. Sorry, there's so many long chats in here and you people are going in, so I'm struggling to keep up, but it's so good to see all of you. I'm going to go back and focus my ADHD into this situation right here. This is a video from, I think it was pretty recently, but not that. It was like it was actually a couple of years ago, around the time. Okay, so it's entitled "How Squid Games Tells the Story of South Korea's Battle with Inequality." Whoa, that's loud. Hold the phone. And I think I haven't switched screens yet either. Don't worry, chat. I haven't forgot you. I'm gonna switch screens. I'm gonna switch it. Oh, I don't even have the display capture on, so you can't even see what I'm doing over here a little bit. That's rude. At least this way you can see. Okay, back to Taylor Tomlinson. She's kind of funny. I haven't seen much of her stand-up. I only saw like moments of it at one point, but from some of the shorts I think I've seen of her, maybe I haven't really seen much of her stand-up. Wasn't the algorithm that brought you here? He was in, but not in a chat with you all earlier, and I just followed you here. Oh, you've been watching this whole time. Okay, Morbius. It's been hiding, secretly lurking in the shadows. Don't worry, Streamler, you're doing awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'm going back, I'm focusing. Here we go.
Why is Squid Game proving so popular? From music to movies and TV dramas, South Korea's once little-known entertainment industry is starting to punch far above its weight. The latest craze is the 9-episode dystopian thriller Squid Game. Just days after being released on Netflix, the ultra-violent drama became a global sensation.
Social media may have shut down for a bit yesterday, but Netflix stayed online. Good news for the millions of people devouring the hit show Squid Game.
Everybody, I'm here with the cast of Squid Game right there.
With almost no marketing, Squid Game's popularity spread mostly through social media, trending with hundreds of thousands of tweets a day, and through memes, which have recreated many of its gruesome scenes. In the US, the show hit #1 by its 4th day, and is set to become the most watched series in Netflix history. One of the lead actresses had her Instagram blow up to millions of followers, and fans are already calling for a sequel. But the show's director says season 2 isn't a sure thing just yet. The success of Squid Game isn't a South Korean one-hit wonder either. Last year, a small budget film called Parasite became a global box office success and was the first non-English film to win Hollywood's biggest prize.
Parasite.
Bong Joon-ho.
So what do Squid Game and Parasite have in common other than gaining mass appeal? It's their ability to tell South Korea's story of inequality, how the country's rapid modernization exposed the excesses of capitalism that left millions on the margins. But why have South Koreans been so good at telling this story? When we think of South Korea today, we think of a high-tech society that exports smartphones, TVs, appliances, and cars. But this wasn't always the case.
In fact, throughout Southeast Asia, there comes open aggression in Korea. Here, the Russian-dominated North Koreans launched a full-scale, well-prepared drive on the capital of the South, Seoul. The peaceful southern democracy was taken by surprise by this communist blitzkrieg, culmination of red aims in the Far East that are perfectly clear for all to see.
After suffering decades of colonization and a brutal civil war, South Korea was one of the poorest nations on earth. Its per capita GDP was just $67 in 1953, and average life expectancy was 42 years. But starting in the 1960s and 70s, South Korea experienced an economic boom. With close coordination between its authoritarian government and family-run conglomerates, the country was able to rapidly transition to an export-driven economy. These companies, known as chaebols, which means wealth clique, practically run the South Korean economy
Okay,
today.
quit spoiling the
They
rest
make
of
your
this.
phone-
Okay, we're actually going to stop it right here. It's a perfect spot for me to switch. Hold on. Wait, what's Brandy recommending? Oh, the new Taylor Tomlinson special. Okay, yeah. I'll also put that on my list of 10,000,001 things to watch, but hopefully I get to it. I feel like that's my life right now. The next video, which I've watched before, but haven't watched very recently. But I just felt it kind of put even in more context. This is a video done by Wendover Productions, which I've seen a lot of good stuff from. Not everything that they do is good and fair and balanced all the time, but I find them to be very good creators. You got 4.5 million subs, so not that they necessarily need your support, but hey, if you enjoyed this video we're about to watch, entitled Samsung's Dangerous Dominance Over South Korea, consider subscribing to their channel. Although, to be completely fair and open and honest and balanced, I'm not actually subscribed to their channel, but I will probably do that right after this video. Wow. Practice what you preach, Streamlord. Jesus Christ.
Geographically speaking, South Korea should be poor. Fractionally larger than the state of Indiana, South Korea isn't big, and unlike Indiana, it's not agriculturally productive. The nation is rugged and steep to the extent that only 22% of its land is actually arable. Worse still, this rocky disposition doesn't make up for its agricultural shortcomings through any sort of mineral wealth. South Korea has coal, but not much, as it ranks 49th globally in proven reserves, far behind even its dirt-poor neighbor to the north. And perhaps most problematic is the fact that the country's 81st in the world in natural gas reserves and is tied dead last in oil, with none at all. And all of these are only the domestic challenges. Zoom out from the Rocky Peninsula, and the region's a who's who of past and present powerhouses. Squeezed through history by empires around it and limited natural resources, South Korea should be poor. But it's not. It's rich. By nominal GDP, South Korea...
Thank you for your concern, Mike. I'm okay. I'm okay. That was me. My phone was hooked up, charging, and I walked to go grab another drink so I could stay hydrated here, and forgot about the cable. Unfortunately, I wasn't using its very useful cableless charging feature, and catapulted it across the space station. But both it and I are fine, so we're going to be able to continue this, no problem.
Has the 10th largest economy in the world, a fact that has much to do with a single company. Before there was a Republic of Korea, and before there was a war to define the economic doctrine of Korea, there was a grocery trading shop in the southern city of Daegu that dealt in fish and noodles and went by the name of Samsung. While the shop's owner, Lee Byung-chul, couldn't have known it in 1938, his business would soon serve as the backbone of one of the most dramatic economic transformations of the 20th century, what economists would come to call the Miracle on the Han River. Now, miracle is a bit of a misnomer. Ultimately, what took South Korean GDP from here to here on a 100-fold growth over 40 years was extraordinary, but also explainable. It was a function of successful long-term planning combining forces with savvy opportunists. It was also, in part, a function of the fact that in 1950, South Korea...
By the way, just so that everybody is aware, and I forgot to say it at the beginning, and I always try and provide this for people so they understand chronologically, at least, can at least attempt to keep things like that in their head. This video is from a year ago, so things is up to date to that time, I would assume, but I'm not even 100% sure of that, so just want to be clear.
...ceased to exist at all. By August of that year, South Korean forces had little land left to defend after the communist North had taken all but this corner of the peninsula. From a southern perspective, it was the bleakest...
Oh, Jesus, Monop, I didn't even consider. I am sorry. Trigger warning, Han River Miracle. Didn't realize that was the case. I didn't realize that even should have been the case, and that's on me. So, thank you for enlightening me.
...point in the war. But war and South Korea's reversal of fortunes in the years that followed created opportunity. In the midst of the Korean War's wreckage, Lee pivoted. In 1953, with leftover Japanese colonial assets selling for cents on the dollar, and much of South Korea's already meager industrial infrastructure in ruin, Lee launched Choi Jidang, a sugar refinery, then, in the year following, Choi Mojik, a wool mill, both under what could now be considered the Samsung Group. For Lee, it was a logical progression, as South Koreans desperately needed everyday products and food, while South Korea's first president, Syngman Rhee, had begun funneling international aid to allied industrialists in hopes of reducing reliance on imports. Rhee's government funded the construction of facilities and the importation of raw sugar for Lee's new projects, and soon, with few to compete with in a war-torn nation, and after a few timely expansions, the Samsung Group became the nation's fourth largest borrower. With cozy political connections and a stronghold over critical industry, the Samsung Group took off. In the years that followed, it acquired Ankook Fire and Marine Insurance and Chohung Bank, while also becoming a major shareholder in 4 other banks. Less than a decade after acquiring that first sugar refinery, Samsung was the peninsula's most powerful conglomerate, and Lee's net worth was estimated to represent 19% of all South Korean wealth. The company had burst into a massive success. The problem was, while South Korea had distributed Western recovery funds...
Oh, wow. I'm gonna back up here about 30 seconds because I was reading chat. I did not realize that, Moan Up. That's both difficult and a very interesting fact about you. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm also, you know, I'm glad that you are you. Yeah. Okay, what was I doing? Oh, I was also going to comment while going back 30 seconds. Did I go back 30 seconds? I think I did. We're just going to go back to this image. But, like, imagine if, like, right now in America, if that's where you are, if you're somewhere else, imagine it in your place. If you don't have to imagine it, then, you know, have patience for us. But, you know, imagine, like, because, I mean, some of you may have Samsung products, very likely. They make a ton of stuff. I personally own some Samsung stuff, right? But like if you're in South Korea, like you go to Samsung Bank, you go to Samsung, and it's, you know, it goes on and on and on. And it's anyway, they explained it very well in this documentary. I'm just trying to make sure I'm in there. It's a messed up part of history. It's just post-Korean War. Boom. Yeah, no, it's certainly a very messed up part of history. It is terrible. And there's a lot of bad stuff that happened in that region. Jesus. Okay, going back. Continuing.
Other banks. Less than a decade after acquiring that first sugar refinery, Samsung was the peninsula's most powerful conglomerate, and E's net worth was estimated to represent 19% of all South Korean wealth. The company had burst into a massive success. The problem was, while South Korea had distributed Western recovery funds and done away with feudal land practices, South Koreans were still poor, and the country was still overwhelmingly agricultural and underdeveloped, issues that came to a head when the military overthrew Rhee's government in 1961. South Korea's economic rise began under a new leader, Park Chung-hee. With a laser-like focus on expanding industrial exports and maximizing South Korea's human capital, GDP growth shot skyward, only dipping under 9% annually on 3 occasions from 1963 to 1978. Driving this growth more than anything were the conglomerates. While Park had publicly stated plans of crushing Korean monopolies that rose through shady dealings in the post-war period during his rise to power, his presidency took a different approach. Rather than breaking the conglomerates up, he assigned them the exportation era's most critical task: getting Korean-made goods to the wider world. With the government providing cheap steel, a plethora of subsidies, lenient loans...
That was such an unfortunate decision, right? Like, what if instead of having the antitrust period, which is essentially what's happened here, like America had, and, you know, consider how bad things are with corporations here in America, like, to have skipped that during industrialization, like an extreme period of industrialization like this. Good God, the implications. Once again, I'm sorry if this was triggering to you growing up. It was never my intention. It was just where my mind landed after watching the doctors protesting more doctors, right? And like how capitalism has affected the country, and how a company like oligarchs essentially have created this system.
And tax breaks to major manufacturers, the likes of Samsung, LG, Hyundai, and SK Group did just that, expanding vertically and horizontally. These family-controlled, government-aided corporate groups came to be known as chaebols, a term that entered common Korean parlance during the 60s and 70s as the institutions grew. In the 70s and 80s, chaebols dominated, pulling the South Korean economy up as they pushed their products out to the world. Samsung launched TVs, then semiconductors, then mobile phones for export. Hyundai sold cars on the international market, and LG opened up a factory in Huntsville, Alabama. Though South Korean citizens came to argue over the role of chaebols in politics and society, what wasn't up for debate was the remarkably positive impacts they had on everyday standards of life. Life expectancy doubled from 1950 to 1990, while infant mortality cratered to less than 1/10 of what it was at the war's end. All the while, chaebols showed no sign of slowing. Through the turn of the century, South Korea's GDP continued to grow, and even with the death of Lee Bong-choi in 1987, Samsung continued to expand globally and dominate domestically under the guidance of his son, Lee Kung-hee. Today, just 7 decades on from the company's prescient pivot, South Korea is Samsung, and Samsung is South Korea. For the average resident, it's a relationship with a corporation as deep as that with the government itself, perhaps best demonstrated through a single eye-popping statistic. Year after year, just about 20% of the entire nation's GDP is made up of Samsung Group revenue. The only single entity that can rival that is the South Korean government, whose spending typically makes up 20 to 25% of GDP. This staggering degree of economic concentration makes even the most extreme examples in the rest of the world appear routine. Japan's biggest company, Toyota, accounts for about 5% of GDP, while the US's Walmart sits at just 2.5%. An entire fifth of an economy being attributed to a single company, especially a single company controlled by a single family in a major advanced diversified economy, is absolutely unparalleled, even at a global scale. Undoubtedly, this exceptional centrality permeates into everyday life. Young people, and especially their parents, tend to fixate on the singular path towards becoming the so-called Samsung man. It's considered the pinnacle of success to have passed all the academic and social hurdles necessary to be deemed worthy to work at the country's largest company, and therefore this idealistic vision is encapsulated across South Korean society. Characters in pursuit of a position at the company even borders on cliché as a plot point in the country's film and television. Just as American youth might fixate on moving to LA to make it into Hollywood or living in New York to break into big business, Korean kids prepare their entire childhood to apply for the opportunity to pack into testing centers along with 100,000 others to take the biannual Samsung aptitude test, hoping to score high enough to get recruiters' attention. Hundreds of thousands won't even be allowed to take the test, then all but a few thousand won't advance past it, leaving legions of disappointed youth who move on to the next layer in the social hierarchy of careers.
The thing is, I think a lot of us kind of feel that in our own lives, even if we aren't oppressed in such a unique and totalitarian sort of fashion, honestly. But I feel like this really speaks to the situation we were talking about earlier with the doctors, right? Because it sounds to me like being a doctor is almost like a second choice career, and the first choice is to work for one of the major conglomerates like Samsung or oh god, what's it called? Oh, my brain just broke, but you get what I'm saying.
Working for the smaller, lesser chaebols like Hyundai or LG. For those that don't succeed there, they move on to the country's small and medium-sized employers, a fact they will try to hide from extended family and friends due to its characterization as failure. This centrality of focus can perhaps be attributed partially to the extent that Samsung has permeated into South Korean life. When you buy a smartphone in South Korea, you buy it from Samsung. When you need life insurance in South Korea, you purchase a policy with Samsung. When you take the ferry in South Korea, you step onto a ship built by Samsung. When you go to the theme park in South Korea, you once again pay your money to Samsung.
Ooh,
this
yeah,
convoluted,
LG.
seemingly scattershot structure.
LG, that's a good example. That's not even the one I was thinking of. For some reason that passes by me. But yes, absolutely, LG. Good example, Mono. Thank you.
Of the conglomerate is reflective of the way that Samsung
Daewoo from Bad Lefty. Thank you as well.
Has followed and captured opportunity wherever it exists through history, and has actually been a critical factor in the Lee family's.
I know they showed a list earlier, and I should have paid more attention. Been focusing partly on chat, partly on this. That is one of my downfalls.
Continued grip on power. Today, there are 59 major Samsung affiliate companies, although, like many aspects of Samsung's ownership structure, this is a soft, subjective definition, as so much of the way in which control is held across the empire is soft and subjective. But let's say there were just two affiliates, one of which wholly owned by the Lee family, one of which wholly owned by outside investors, both worth $50 million respectively. Now, most major business decisions are settled with a simple majority, meaning to approve a budget for the next year, for example, just 50% worth of shareholders plus one needs to vote affirmatively. So that's to say, 49.9% of the E family ownership in the first affiliate is effectively worthless from a control perspective, at least for most decisions. So what they could do is sell that 49.9%, buy 49.9% of the other affiliate.
You once owned a Daewoo microwave, and it was a fantastic product. What? You don't Morbius doesn't own any Samsung products at all. I actually happen to own a couple of Samsung hard drives, like the solid state ones. They're fantastic, honestly. It kills me watching this video and thinking about how I've indirectly contributed to inequality. You just got an alert that David Feldman will be live in 30 minutes. My God, he's starting late.
then use a tiny bit of extra cash to get up to 50% plus one ownership of both affiliates. It's essentially the same amount of money invested, but two companies under E-family control instead of one.
I gotta say, David Feldman's got a lot of energy for an older kind of guy, you know? Starting the stream middle of the night, he's always like so animated when he's talking, and it's hilarious to me.
But now using their control of both of these companies, they could instruct each to use annual operating profit to buy up 50% plus one ownership in a third affiliate, rather than paying it back to themselves and the other owners, which would be subject to income tax. And while they wouldn't directly own the third affiliate, they would control it because they control the first two affiliates, which control the third. And even then, while 50% plus one ownership is technically needed for control, in practice it's often overkill, as it only becomes relevant in a case of complete dissent by every other shareholder, which is rare, especially when one has generated the degree of cult of personality that the E family has. So the E family might only need 30 or 40% direct or indirect control of a given affiliate if another 10 or 20% is owned by trustworthy, allied, outside investors. Through the decades, these and other systems have compounded to create this: a scattered, convoluted web of ownership that can confuse even the savviest financial analysts, but ultimately results in what matters to the Lee family most: complete control of the entire empire. But these structures are tenuous, especially...
Oh god, hold on. We've passed it. I feel like I've done this a bunch of times, and that's on me. But we feel like we've passed a bunch of graphs, and I usually wait to... I usually pause the videos, and so I'm going to at least get this one, because this one was so convoluted. Felt like a lot of the other graphics were really simple to understand, but this one is complex. Wow. Excuse me. So you got chairman at the top, spelled him correctly, but we won't hold them to account over something like that. Seems to have top-down leadership to both Samsung CNT, which I don't know what they do. Samsung Electronics. How do you pronounce that? I don't want to pronounce that. I don't know if you're seeing my problem with this orange one, but I don't even... I'm going to call it Chill Industries, but it doesn't seem very chill. Directly to Samsung Life Insurance, Samsung Wells Street, and then it goes down to Samsung Fire and Marine, Samsung Card, Semco, Samsung SDI, Samsung Securities, Samsung Asset Management, S1 Corporation, Hotel Sheila. Hotel Sheila? What in the fuck? Hotel? Okay, Samsung TechWin, Samsung Heavy Industries, which appears to be some sort of subsidiary of both Semco and Samsung Life Insurance somehow. I don't understand how that's the case. But do you see the web? It's like Semco and Samsung SDI both seem to be partly owned by Samsung Electronics. They're just shell companies of shell companies of shell companies. Samsung Engineering, Samsung General Chemicals, aka Samsung Petrochem, which means they're in oil and gas. Samsung Fine Chemicals, Samsung SDS. You would assume Fine Chemicals is manufacturing and chemistry stuff. Samsung SDS, Samsung Display, Chill Worldwide. Chill Worldwide. That sounds like something from what's it called? Parks and Rec. Does that not remind you? Chill Worldwide. That's like what's his name? Aziz Ansari's character's second business after what's it called? Entertainment 360 or whatever. 720. It was Entertainment 720 because they would go around the world twice to get the job done, which I always thought was so great. Okay, Chill Worldwide. Super chill. That chart makes me feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Mike, LOL, I think so. It looks like a bloody circuit board. I know, right? Love it. Samsung Chemicals. Wow, they have their hands in everything. Grizzly. Grizzly. I'll play you in Cones of Dunshire. Okay, we're gonna continue watching. Just want to provide some very interesting context. You know, graphics, I gotta say, I never regret stopping for graphics. I don't know how you guys feel, but it always feels like a rewarding experience. And like we learn things by reading the graphics, and they always go by them so quick, but they tell us so much.
Web of ownership that can confuse even the savviest financial analysts, but ultimately results in what matters to the Lee family most: complete control of the entire empire.
Wait, did you hear that, chat? Sorry, I'm about to pull my own horn for 1 second.
Matters to the Lee family most: complete control of the entire.
Wait.
Family might only need 30 or 40% direct or indirect control of a given affiliate if another 10 or 20% is owned by trustworthy, allied, outside investors. Through the decades, these and other systems have compounded to create this: a scattered, convoluted web of ownership that can confuse even the savviest financial analysts.
It's a convoluted web of ownership that can confuse the savviest financial analysts. Well, I feel savvy now, chat, and you should feel savvier too, because we just did it together. Okay, we just broke it down pretty good. We probably could have gone in more depth, but I didn't want to put more people like Brandy to sleep. However, I hope you sleep well, Brandy. It was good to see you. Hopefully you can manage to sleep while listening. All right, moving forward.
But ultimately results in what matters to the Lee family most: complete control of the entire empire. But these structures are tenuous, especially when someone dies. South Korea has one of the highest inheritance taxes in the world, 50%. That means that 50% of the value of assets goes to the government when they're passed from one generation to the next. Therefore, if Lee Kung-hee, for example, passed $5 billion in shares to his son, Lee Jae-young, the heir would have to find some $2.5 billion to pay the government, which he likely could only do by selling $2.5 billion worth of shares, therefore losing the voting power that they bestow. This hypothetical started to feel far more concrete in May of 2014 due to this: the heart attack of Lee Kung-hee. The chairman survived, but only barely. As he sat comatose in a hospital bed at the same—
Oh god. You gotta say that picture was pretty, like, it just really felt like you're looking at somebody
power that they bestow.
who saw themselves as a king. Oh, Morbius is leaving. Good seeing you, Morbius. Good having you. Glad you decided to say hello. Hope you were reasonably infotained. Whoopsies. Whoopsies. What have I done? Sorry, chat. Houston, we have a problem. Go web, go.
This hypothetical started to feel far more concrete in May of 2014 due to this: the heart attack of Lee Kung-hee. The chairman survived, but only barely. As he sat comatose in a hospital bed at the Samsung Medical Center for days, weeks, months, and eventually years, his children were thrown into a power struggle as they used the time to craft a plan that would keep Samsung in family control after paying inheritance taxes upon their father's inevitable and seemingly impending death. This was difficult. The numbers were tough, and so it required some creativity. Perhaps
oh my god.
Too much.
And not to like...
Two of the most critical links in the Lee family ownership...
Hold on. Before we get more into this graph, apparently. That picture, and this is not to really poke fun at it, but like it was kind of comical, so it's hard not to at least like point this out. But or at least the analogies feel like they stick, okay? Whether or not you find it funny is up to you. But the like it felt like I was watching Lindsey Graham, or was it Lindsey Graham? No, wait, no, not Lindsey Graham. It's the other demon. Shit, the one with Alzheimer's, who keeps forgetting where he is during press conferences. Why can't I think of it? Why can't I think of it right now? Yes, thank you, Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, who has been having extreme senior moments in the public, and it just like you shouldn't be in charge of stuff. You should know where you are at least 99.99% of the time. Shouldn't be shouldn't be that easy to get footage of you completely going full internet dial-up tone on everybody in such a way that is like genuinely like concerning. Like I see that, I'm like, oh no, like somebody needs to do something about that. Like for a moment. And it's I know chat, I know, and feel free to rage and chat at me for this because it's for the just, and it's just for, but it's only momentary. But when I see that, I do have this like gut reaction of sympathy and being like, geez, I just wish that, you know. But then obviously I'm like, oh right, you're a demon human who's kind of ruined American democracy, so I feel less bad about it immediately. But there's just that momentary, I think, human response of like, geez, I hate to see somebody going through that. I have family members that I've seen dealing with things like dementia, and it's hard. It's really hard, and it's somewhat reminiscent of that. And so maybe that's partly why I have that initial tinge of whatever you want to call it. Anyways, let's listen to what they have to say about this graph.
Web were Samsung Construction and Trading, or CNT, and Choi Industries, each of which, as two of the oldest Samsung affiliates, acted primarily as de facto holding companies of sorts. But E-family control of CNT, and therefore electronics, engineering, chemicals, and the other affiliates partially owned by CNT, was fading as outside, increasingly hostile investors continued to buy in. If Lee Kung-hee never awoke from his coma, the 50% inheritance tax would be a death blow, and the House of Cards would crumble. Therefore, a plan. They'd merge CNT and Choi.
Okay.
While quantifying their control of each is difficult due to the
I'm so glad somebody said it before me, because although we might just continue calling it Chill Industries, I feel like I like Chill Industries better. Although I can say Choi, Chill. Come on, missed opportunity.
of their soft, informal control. What's important to know is that
Chad
E-control
agreed with
Choi
me.
was
Thank
much
you. I'm glad.
stronger than
Because, like, I agree. Control-Alt-Delete Mitch, right? But it also, difficult to watch somebody have an absolute, breakdown of their mental faculties live. But then you think about the context and what sort of things Mitch McConnell has either brought to the floor of Congress or voted for, and downstream effects of those legislations. And yeah, then you start to think, maybe this isn't that bad. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it'll get him out of there. Maybe he'll finally retire to a pasture full of peach trees.
of CNT, so what would make the restructuring productive for them would be if it overvalued Choi and undervalued CNT, so that post-merger, they'd effectively end up with more relative control over the new combined de facto holding company, and therefore more control over the entire empire without having spent a cent. So they proposed exactly that, an objectively bad deal. One CNT share would convert to 0.35 Choi shares. CNT shareholders, and specifically its largest, American hedge fund Elliott, started campaigning against the merger, arguing that Choi was objectively worth about $3.42 billion, but a merger ratio of 0.35 inflated its value to $4.08 billion, effectively gifting hundreds of millions of dollars in value to the E's straight from the pockets of CNT shareholders. It was an unbelievably good deal for the family, but they couldn't do it alone. Unlike most business decisions, which the E family could directly control through their de facto simple majority, mergers and acquisitions require supermajority approval of 2/3 of shareholders. They could get most of the way there themselves, but to push it over the edge, they needed to convince CNT shareholders to vote against their own interests. But there was one whale. The single largest outside shareholder, with 11.6% of ownership, was the South Korean National Pension Service, which was run by the Ministry of Health and Welfare, which was run by the South Korean government, which at the time was run by President Park Geun-hye. That's to say, if they could get to President Park, she might be able to get to the pension service.
Okay.
Conveniently,
that's about enough. I think we've gone through most of this. I've broken up a lot of it, and the rest of it is, I think a good portion of it is conclusion. I think we made a lot of conclusions while we were watching this. So, Chill Industries sounds like a bong manufacturer. I love that. I love that. It's not as fun to make fun of people with mental decline, but sometimes you gotta treat monsters like monsters. Mo, no, very based. You prefer Chill, to be honest. Chill Industries makes it palatable. I'm not sure if that's better or worse. Is palatable good or bad? I don't know how I feel about that. Okay. Gonna leave South Korea for now. For Africa, this is a video entitled "What's Behind the Armed Conflict in Eastern DR." Actually, no. We're gonna go in different order, actually, because this one's more fun. I feel like we gotta lift up some spirits, and we don't have to watch all of it either. But this is, and I've seen a few of these that are like this, where it's just like, it almost feels like you're in the Twilight Zone watching it. But this is a talk at Google, from the Talks at Google channel, which has 2.25 million subscribers, on a video entitled "Smuggler Nation: How Illicit Trade Made America" by Peter Andreas. He actually wrote a book about this. So this is a great talk, and I think is a great context for a lot of the sort of way that things are framed in our current world and paradigm. All right, I'm just gonna let him say it.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Sorry we're a few minutes late. I just want to give a really quick introduction to Peter Andreas. He's a professor at Brown University, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about his book, Smuggler Nation. Enjoy.
Thank you to Google, Christopher and Jordan for the invite. Thrilled that Google has these kind of events, not only once in a while, but apparently all the time. So it's the kind of place I'd like to be, sort of like a university campus, like where I'm at. Anyway, the name of the book, as you know, is called Smuggler Nation: How Illicit Trade Made America. And what I do in this book is I basically re-narrate the American epic, a 300-year epic that's a pretty familiar story to you all, but I tell it in a rather unfamiliar, unconventional way. So familiar episodes: the American Revolution, industrialization, westward expansion, Manifest Destiny, the American Civil War, the Progressive Era, America's rise as a global superpower. These are familiar stories in our history, but I retell them through the lens of smuggling and anti-smuggling campaigns of various sorts over time. And I'd like to think, I hope you'll be convinced by the talk, but you could look at the book too if you're inspired, that by looking at our country's history through this rather unconventional lens, we see some things we otherwise might miss. And in this case, I want to hopefully convince you that in fact it turns out that smuggling and anti-smuggling crusades were absolutely essential to the very founding and development and expansion of the country. So much so that there's this great irony, which today America is the world's foremost anti-smuggling policing superpower, yet founded and owes much of its founding and development, I would argue, to smuggling interests, and so forth. And an interesting angle for me is I teach at Brown University in Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, and it turns out I had no intention of looking for this, but I discovered in the process of the research how important tiny Rhode Island was, the smallest state in the nation, in this history. So let's backtrack to the colonial period and look at the importance of, say, molasses, seemingly benign product, but it's intimately intertwined with smuggling and the economy of the Northeast. Why is that so? Well, the most important export of the colonies is rum, and the most important ingredient to make rum is, of course, molasses. And molasses is coming from the Caribbean, but it's supposed to come mostly from the British West Indies, but it's coming, in fact, from the French West Indies. How do we know this? We know all these distilleries in Rhode Island and Massachusetts produce a certain amount of rum, and we know that the molasses they're getting in legally can't possibly produce that much rum. So the difference is made up by the black market. And it's crucially important in terms of the slave trade as well, because they export rum to West Africa for slaves, bring slaves to the Caribbean, and they bring back more molasses to the colonies. Now, the British for many years, decades in fact, had a kind of tolerant live and let live attitudes towards this illicit trade. But after the 7 Years' War with the French, the British were broke, they desperately needed more revenue, and so they decided to crack down on the colonies to help fill the king's coffers. And instead of accepting this, the colonists in fact balked. They balked rather radically, in fact. And Rhode Island was one of the first places to basically say enough is enough, and they had a raiding party on a customs vessel called the Gaspee. This famous incident where
the state of Rhode Island had a raiding party. Oh my god, that one's killing me right now. We're gonna rewind that 10 seconds. We gotta hear that again. It's so good.
accepting this, the colonists in fact balked. They balked rather radically, in fact. And Rhode Island was one of the first places to basically say enough is enough, and they had a raiding party on a customs vessel called the Gaspee. It's a famous incident in Rhode Island. They celebrate it every year now, actually, called the Gaspee Fair, where they basically burn down the vessel in Narragansett Bay, and Rhode Islanders think of it as the opening salvo in the American Revolution, though the Tea Party in Boston gets all the credit for that. So I don't want to overstate the case how important molasses and rum was in the origins of the American Revolution, but we should also not gloss over it. After all, it was John Adams who said we should not blush to recognize the importance of rum and molasses in our War of Independence. But it's not just a story about the roots of the revolution. The revolution itself was made possible by smuggling and smuggling interests. So how does George Washington take on the world's foremost military power? Well, he basically relies deeply on smugglers.
By the way, Chad, do you find this interesting right now? Because I find it fascinating, and I haven't watched the whole thing. I watched a snippet of him previously, started watching the talk, and I was like, why not just watch it with chat? I feel like they'll enjoy this sort of take where it's framing things differently, because it's constantly, oh, China's stealing our IP, oh, you know, Palestine is encroaching on Israel, and they have, you know, and it I just feel like it brings it from a completely different perspective of, oh, no. America was founded on piracy. America was founded on stealing everything from everybody. And now that they're in a good position, they're telling everybody, oh, no. We hate stealing. We stop stealing stuff. That's ours.
To basically provide enough ammunition, especially gunpowder, for his desperately undersupplied Continental Army. Now, it turns out that the people supplying his army are not only do it as patriots, but they're also doing it as profiteers. In fact, John Brown, one of the founders of Brown University, there's some great correspondence between him and George Washington's buyer of powder, where the buyer is basically saying, you are charging us exorbitant prices for this powder, but under the desperate circumstances, we really have no other alternatives. And John Brown actually emerges from the American War of Independence.
I gotta say, chat, you guys are great. I love having you here, and everybody who's shown up and is either still here, I really appreciate you. B-Cat and Moa Nope, all this talk about, sorry, it's Moa Nope who's talking about the pool floaty right now. But like all this talk about pools and lakes, I feel like I'm definitely gonna have to make something for Galactic Lake or pool, whichever one wins out. Maybe I'll make a poll somewhere, and we'll decide. Or I'll just start designing stuff. We'll see. Whoops. Why did I just do that? That's not what I meant to click. No, still wrong.
probably the richest man in Rhode Island. So he made some of his fortune in powder runs. He was also involved.
Wireless Mike and Bad Lefty both enjoy it, but Bad Lefty is a massive nerd and enjoy history. Well, I also love history, so that's kind of why I like this stuff, because it always helps in providing context, I feel like. And while it can be kind of dry and difficult, I hope that I can at least elevate it slightly. We won't watch the whole thing, but there was just, I wanted us to get to at least a certain point in it, and then I figured I'd stop.
Involved in the molasses trade and other illicit trades before the revolution, but part of his fortune was very much as a war profiteer of sorts in our very War of Independence. So yes, the war was about patriotism and freedom and liberty, but they also were able to harness the profit motive and greed, frankly, in actually pulling it off. In some respects, there's parallels to today's insurgencies and civil wars and so on. There's a sort of vigorous debate in the literature on contemporary civil wars arguing that somehow they're profoundly new and different because they're so greed-driven. And we look at things like cocaine-financed guerrillas in Colombia, or opium-financed insurgents in Afghanistan, or blood diamonds in West Africa. We all know the term blood diamonds now. They even made a James Bond movie about it, and I think Leonardo DiCaprio even made a movie with the title Blood Diamonds. But what I argue here, in more detail in the book, is that the role of conflict commodities, the importance of trade in wartime, goes all the way back, not just years or decades, but in fact, centuries. So if we fast forward in American history to the American Civil War, I cannot think of a single conflict commodity that mattered more in an armed rebellion than the role of cotton in actually perpetuating an insurgency. In fact, the Confederacy arguably would not have even had the chutzpah to actually try to go independent if they didn't think that King Cotton, as they called it, could help them pull it off. Initially, they thought the British would come to their aid formally, intervene on their side because the British were so dependent on cotton, but the British were smart about it and realized they could acquire a significant amount of cotton through illicit channels. They didn't need to formally intervene on the side of the South. That would be very risky and too overt and blunt and direct. So they could, in fact, turn a blind eye to what they call blockade runners. So basically running through the Union blockade of southern ports, smuggling arms and ammunition in, and bringing out desperately needed cotton out.
I love you, chat. Being very entrepreneurial in chat right now, it would seem. Mono, would you like? Are you interested in investing in the bong pool floaty TM? You've already trademarked it. It took, how long did it take you? I've only been streaming for like 3 hours. It's impressive. That's really impressive. People want to open a company. Okay. Yeah, you guys start drawing up designs. I'll just keep streaming, I guess.
For British factories and so on. It wasn't as much, obviously, as pre-war cotton supplies, but it was enormously profitable for those who could actually successfully get this commodity out. There was also a lot of trading of cotton across the front lines. A lot of Northerners made a lot of money on cotton speculation, cotton trading, cotton smuggling. Abraham Lincoln, known as Honest Abe, actually had a pretty tolerant attitude about this. He actually pardoned a lot of cotton smugglers who were sitting in jail during the American Civil War. A lot of it's for political connections. He decided not to make a big deal out of it. So again, we only need to look at our own Civil War to realize it's not that fundamentally, today's civil wars are in some ways not that fundamentally different in terms of their dependence on conflict commodities and keeping them going. Now notice it wasn't enough to turn the balance of power on the ground in favor of the South, but it actually helped perpetuate that conflict far longer, make it far bloodier than anyone expected. I mean, in fact, more Americans died in the American Civil War than any conflict the U.S. has been involved in since. Over 600,000 people, Americans died.
I feel like that's what we have to continue to remember, is that it's the capitalists that win when conflicts like these happen. Things in Gaza, things in Ukraine that prop up these sorts of companies. And they always get framed in the same way, but this sort of context is super important, I feel like, right? None of the people that are currently browbeating people that are either Palestinian or pro-Palestinian are, speaking from countries that did basically either very similar stuff or in context with China and trade, or like, granted, like, do all these countries that I've just listed in one way or another have their own problems? Absolutely, and I'm not here to say they don't. So yeah, I'm just sick of people seeing things in such a one-sided and nonsense sort of what do you call it? I guess I'm trying not to say uneducated sort of way, right? Like, because I do feel like people, quote unquote, sometimes try and learn, things and educate themselves outside of what they were maybe taught growing up, but I feel like not enough people do, and it frustrates me. And so these kinds of videos for me are very, very enjoyable. Joe Biden is already 22. He was just 20. That didn't take any time at all. I fixed the Nightbot. I absolutely fixed Nightbot. Tons of commands. You can find the commands list at commands with an S.
In that war, and I would argue that cotton actually played an important role in keeping it fueled, if you will. There's also an interesting story, and perhaps particularly interesting to you folks here at Google, about intellectual property theft. Basically, there's a rigorous debate going on right now, as you're well aware, in Washington and elsewhere, about the growth of intellectual property theft and knockoff products and so on. A lot of finger pointing at China especially, but other countries as well. Well, from the perspective of my book, the message that the United States is sending China and other countries around the world is, do as I say, not as I did. I mean, basically, I don't think it's too much of an overstatement to say that the United States in the 19th century was the world's hotbed of intellectual property theft, of outright blatant piracy of other countries and people's products. So let's start actually with America's actual own early industrialization process. How does an upstart nation, backward nation, actually catch up to its European rivals that it has just gone independent from? Well, it can't do it purely through indigenous means. So Alexander Hamilton and others actually very bluntly say we need to acquire the technologies and machinery from Europe, especially England, through any means necessary. Now, they used words like borrow, very polite word, right? But it's not like you're giving the stuff back, right? So it actually meant outright theft. And theft, in fact, meant smuggling. So
I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. There's a movie, and it's not The Borrowers. That's not what I'm thinking. But there's like a movie where that's like a quote. It's like a bunch of thieves, but they call it borrowing. I can't remember what it is, and it's hilarious to hear it in that context. America used to be cool, bruh. They grow up so fast these days. It's like a co-op. I love it. You want to help her get it off the ground? Okay, chat. I see you. By the way, to anybody who's been watching this long enough to notice, has my mic been more audible? I edited some filters over the last 2 streams, and I've just been trying to tweak them, but it's great to get feedback from chat, and you guys are so great about that I figured I'd ask while I'm paused. Anyway, ones in chat if you noticed a difference.
Early textile equipment, newly invented in England, would soon appear in the United States in various pieces and packages and so on. And the British authorities tried to crack down on this with mixed results. It slowed it, but did not stop it. And when the equipment got to the United States, there was just one problem on the part of that the importers couldn't deal with, which was the equipment doesn't really come with operating instructions. And in fact, sometimes it came in pieces, so you don't even know how to put it together. So you not only need the technology, the machinery, but you actually need the know-how, the people who know how to operate it. And guess what? It's illegal for British skilled workers, artisans, who don't know how to operate the machinery to leave Britain. It's actually a violation of British immigration laws to actually bring yourself over to the United States and help the country industrialize. So again, this is a smuggling story. Some of Britain's most ambitious artisans, skilled workers, clandestinely found their way across the ocean, sneaking aboard ships, pretending to be farmers and so on. Some of them were actually wooed over by agents, US agents, which would go over and try to basically tell people, spread the message that there's good opportunities in the United States.
Yeah. It's a perfect place for you to stop because I'm going to respond to chat at the same time. My mic has been good, and I appreciate that. I'm glad to hear that. I don't sound as far away from the mic either. Great. I edited some filters. I feel like I'm the same distance, essentially, but I used some stuff that should hopefully help. All right. And the thing is I don't have a chance to watch all of my VODs, especially because I haven't been editing them yet. I've been doing so much with just trying to get everything together here that I have not been doing that like I should. It's a bad stream lord. But yeah, I appreciate the feedback. However, I was gonna say, like, that's like, I feel like that time in American history is so glamorized. It's always referred to as this like perfect moment and like capitalist and like, oh, libertarian tendencies. You go out and you strike it rich and you blah blah blah. But like, you know, like when other countries do it now, it's no, that's not acceptable. We're supposed to be, that's our story, and it's very dumb. Very dumb.
Most famous of these.
Oh yeah, I also changed some settings on the volume for the videos, and hopefully that's been better too, because I know there were some issues with that a bunch of streams as well. It's a work in progress, folks, and I appreciate your staying on board for all of it.
Ambitious British artisans who came to the United States. There's a man named Samuel Slater. You've maybe heard of him. High school textbooks usually attribute him as the father of the American Industrial Revolution. It's a bit of an overstatement, but there's a lot of truth to it. When he arrived in New York looking for work, a man named Moses Brown, one of the other founders of Brown University, heard about him and actually made him an offer he couldn't refuse. So Samuel Slater came up to Pawtucket, Rhode Island to create the first textile mill in the area. And there's now actually a museum where you can visit Slater Mills. And this was really the very early industrialization process.
It's hilarious.
In the United States.
That is incredible. I gotta look it up now because wow, what a story. Wait. Brown University. What is this from? 1764. Hold on, I gotta go back 10 seconds and listen to that again. But wow, it's like that college is like it's like a foundation of our educational system in a lot of ways, and it's like, you know, built on this. Jesus, oh, it makes you really question things when you look at it, you know, in this way.
Island to create the first textile mill in the area, and there's now actually a museum where you can visit Slater Mills, and this was really the very early industrialization process in the United States, but done through illicit acquisition of machinery and illicit acquisition of the skilled workers necessary to work the machinery. It's not just an issue of patents, though, it's also a copyright story. So famous battle, actually, in the 19th century between Charles Dickens and the United States. I mean, now, right, it's Steven Spielberg and other producers of art and so on, upset that their movies appear overnight in China on the black market and so on. Music industry, Hollywood, and so on are obviously tremendously upset. But, you know, the equivalent in the 19th century would have been people like Charles Dickens. He's not only the most famous one, but there are many of them. And so when he came to the United States to tour, to do readings, he was, of course, thrilled that he had so many fans on this side of the ocean, but he was really not very happy to find out that all his books were easily obtainable without him seeing any of the proceeds. In fact, his publisher had nothing to do with it. He got no money, royalties at all. And for a number of decades, he actually was screaming bloody murder to the U.S. federal government to please do something about this, and the U.S. government turned a blind.
Yeah. Oh no, that's hilarious. It's true. And I mean, I think this guy is making them much more interesting, at least, and more filled with context. Like, Brown University was founded by people who ran a mill that stole intellectual property and copyright from somebody else. And Charles Dickens. I mean, like, it's crazy. It is crazy. You heard it. I don't have to repeat it all for you, but you know what I mean. Like, and I'm totally on board with what you're saying, and I hope that we've somehow made it interesting. Me and this guy. Not that he was made aware of our partnership here. Wink.
And turned a deaf ear. And it wasn't, in fact, until people like Mark Twain came along and had their own self-interest in intellectual property protection. In other words, when the United States actually was producing intellectual property of its own, did the country discover, oh yeah, maybe there's actually a real logic here for protecting intellectual property. So the United States goes, in a relatively short period of time, from being at the forefront of piracy, intellectual property theft, to become the world's foremost advocate of protection of intellectual property.
I think that's a perfect place to stop. He wrapped it up perfectly. And yeah, I don't want to bore you all with a 40-minute presentation on copyright, but hopefully that first 15-ish minutes was illuminating in some way. Should crimes against Britain really be crimes? More historical context coming from Bad Lefty, and totally fair point. You know, we could go context diving for everything, you know. But I think the best thing to do is to hold people accountable at every level of accountability that there is, and you know what I mean? To at least be trying to be good people. Granted, I also try and put historical norms into context as well. You know, I don't expect people from 1500 to be doing the same thing as people in 2024. But I think it's important to have that sort of, at least some semblance of that ability to be able to go down the list on like stuff like that and be like, okay, copyright law should be a month-long series, law and history, like for me, or just in general from someone. Oh, this one I also missed, but you know, let's watch both of these. These should be fucking better. Well, actually, no, sorry, I misspeak. The first one's gonna be bad, but the second one might be better. So, I can get through this one. This one's not too long, at least. It's just the content of it is probably gonna be a little rough. Switch. Go web, go.
Now, one of Russia's best-known human rights campaigners, Oleg Orlov, has been jailed for 2.5 years by a court in Moscow. Mr. Orlov, who is 70, was found guilty of repeatedly discrediting the Russian army. He was initially fined at a trial last year, but prosecutors demanded a stiffer penalty. Mr. Orlov played a leading role in the Nobel Prize-winning group Memorial, which was shut down by the Russian authorities. 2 years ago, he complained in a newspaper article that President Vladimir Putin had led the country into fascism. Joining us on the line now is our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg. Steve, tell us more about Mr. Orlov and what's happened to him.
Here in Moscow, the mood's quite somber, I have to say. Some of Mr. Orlov's supporters are still milling about. A short while ago, he was found guilty of repeatedly discrediting the Russian armed forces through some of his public criticisms of the war in Ukraine.
By the way, before we get too far down this, we're already a minute in. This is a video from BBC entitled "Russian human rights activist Oleg Orlov was jailed over Ukrainian war opposition," and came out about 15 hours ago.
He was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. At that moment, court officials handcuffed him, put him into the cage that is the dock in that room, and then he was led out down the corridor by police. And as you mentioned, it was only last year that he was on trial, the same charges. He was convicted then, but a slightly different result. He was fined and he walked free. But prosecutors had complained. They thought that was too lenient, and a retrial was ordered, which has had this result. He's now going to prison.
Tell us a bit more about him and his campaigning, and how well known is he in Russia?
He's very well known. He is a veteran human rights campaigner. He's 70 years old. He was for many years connected with Memorial, the well-known, the famous human rights organization here in Russia. And he's been an outspoken critic, both of the authorities and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Yesterday in court, he gave a closing statement, and he said he regretted nothing. He didn't regret what he'd written, what he'd said, and he said that Russia was falling deeper and deeper into darkness. He painted a very bleak picture of what was happening here and the crackdown on dissent. He knew, I think, that this retrial would end with him going to prison. The question was the length of the prison sentence. Prosecutors had demanded yesterday 2 years.
Can you hear that, chat? Somebody with a mic is making some sort of clicking noise, and it's driving me crazy.
And 11 months. When the judge announced the sentence today, it was 2 years and 6 months.
Okay, Steve Rosenberg, thank you.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. Russia is continuing to jail anybody who speaks out against the Ukrainian war in an authoritarian fashion. So, yeah. Okay, the next one, hopefully we can all kind of laugh about. I'm kind of thinking about making a montage of these once I get them all together. But back in the day, and I only found one like real quick when I was looking for it. I only watched a tiny portion of it, and I was like, okay, let's just watch this together as well. And I don't know if we're gonna watch the whole thing, but like I want to make a montage of like Hassan yelling at Cenk on the TYT network back in the day when he used to be a contributor there. And this is a video I found of him challenging Cenk on some of his views. I thought would be funny.
And that actually brings us to...
Oh my god, that's loud. Fuck you, Hassan. Just kidding, just kidding. Do not come after me, Hasnabi Complex. I'm just kidding. That was all in jest. Only about my ears being exploded. That's the only thing I was talking about. I promise. Okay. And this is rare because I think you guys know that I almost never watch videos like this. So enjoy this rare Streamlord video. It's like a rare Pokemon. It's the same, but it's shinier. And definitely rarer.
And that actually brings us to, I guess, the second point that I wanted to get to in this conversation, which is, if you believe that democracy works in the level of governance, why don't you believe that we can implement democracy in the...
Wait. I forgot to tell you when this was from. This was from... Why is this in the way? Get that out of the way. 4 years ago. I don't know the exact date of it. So somewhere in, you would think, 2020. Maybe 2019? I'm trying to think. Yeah. Somewhere between 2019 and 2020.
workplace, especially considering that adults spend 80% of their entire lives inside of these corporations, and these corporations are absolutely authoritarian in its structure. There is a top-down power structure, and that contributes significantly to alienation. That is, again, a consequence of the class antagonism that I mentioned before, and the fact that wealth is concentrated at the top, and they are allowed to do this. But the worst part about this is that we take it for granted. We assume that this is the norm when it should not be the norm, and that's my point. And that's one way to transition into a true democracy where we are getting more democratic outcomes within the workplace, through commodity production, and then ultimately through the drastic wealth redistribution that occurs as a consequence of that will help us gain, like us American workers, gain more dignity and more power and become better equipped to argue for their own interests.
Okay, so there's a lot of layers to that.
By the way, chat, I don't know how this video ends. I'm just kind of hoping that at some point soon it gets very yelly, because that's how it always went between them when they started. And when the video starts with the word challenged, I'm like, oh yeah, it's gonna get super yelly in here. So yeah, this is a rare sort of drama react video to just for fun, because the idea crossed my mind.
And we'll go through them one by one. First of all, it depends on the type of company that you have. First layer is the size of the company. So if you have a very large company that is incredibly profitable, well, then you have less. Let's put it this way, and it's a funny way of putting it, but less excuse not to share it with your.
Wait, Dan from the internet produced this show? Is that what you're saying? A few years ago? He was producer on this show? Is that what you're telling me? That's funny. That is funny. I think that's what you're saying. If not, correct me, please. I might be wrong. Honestly, have kind of orbited far out of the TYT sphere, if you will. I don't know exactly when, but I stopped. It just, they haven't been as... I feel like they've stopped speaking to me more and more as time goes on, and then obviously Anna Gate happened, and things really fell apart at that point. There's still a couple supporters that I said that wrong. There's still a couple of former contributors or current contributors like Francesca. Trying to think of who else I'm thinking of. But you get what I'm saying. I was right. Okay, I think I'm right. I think chat's saying I was right. So yeah, good. I hope that means that this was this was fun. So I'm probably gonna wrap up the stream after this one. I'm thinking it's getting so late. Unless you all really want me to continue, I do have more stuff, but I figured I could wait until later. It's getting so late. I did start at like midnight though, Eastern Standard Time, so it's on me.
Employees, with the community, etc. You're just doing that to maximize profit, and you know they colloquially call it greedy, but I'm going to explain in a second that it's built into the coding, and so it's almost mandatory. If you're a smaller company, well, it's a matter of survival. So when we were talking the original example of the 24 and the 30 and all that, well, you're just trying to get to break even, and that's a completely different dynamic. Okay, so but that's less important. The more important distinction is private companies versus public companies. So a private company run by...
Here's one of the problems I have with what Cenk is saying here already. I know, I've already interrupted it pretty quickly, but like the framing, like part of the problem with that framing, and I'm sure Cenk is aware of this, but like a lot of corporations currently use that sort of framing of like, we're a small business, we're not making money, to use tax loopholes to avoid paying taxes, but had massive like angel investor money, you know, millions and billions of dollars, and it's just like, how are small businesses supposed to compete with that if companies like that are receiving those kinds of funds are treated the same way, right? And there has to be a way for us to start distinguishing that kind of stuff, you know, because there's always this talk about small business, but then the laws for small business are used by big companies to subvert the structure that's meant to keep them from becoming monopolies. Anyway, continuing.
Founder or CEO, etc., can really do whatever it wants. And he could say to its investors, it could say to different things, hey, this is how much I'm going to share with the employees, and it becomes more discretionary. Once you become a public company, you do not have a choice anymore. You must maximize profit at all costs. Otherwise, you will be removed from your position.
Yeah, your fiduciary responsibility. It's literally built in. It's almost like, once again, that like every...
Like, and for instance, like they're not really getting too heated yet, so I feel okay interrupting right here, but like the example that comes to mind immediately is a company like Uber, right, who completely upended an industry. And while there's definitely criticisms of certain places where taxis, for instance, like medallions in New York, were super expensive before Uber came there, but they absolutely subverted local laws at every single step. They received hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. In fact, I believe they were already valued at multiple billions of dollars before they ever went public. Billions, right? And so it can't just be public, right? It can't just be whether or not it's a public or a private company. That distinction, like, is too easy to use to avoid taxes. And I feel like Cenk kind of misses that in this point. Anyway.
Asset of even our legal institutions.
Seriously, BCat, don't even get me started on that interview, please. I'm gonna. No, but I hear exactly what you're saying, and I feel like now's not the time for me to comment on that. But I did catch some snippets of that interview and was pretty appalled by what I saw.
Protecting the
mostly just frustrated, not even necessarily appalled, but kind of just frustrated. Just like, why not speak up on this or that issue? Why allow that without any pushback? And anyway, sorry, I'm doing it now. I'm doing it. See, look what you started. Domino. You pushed a domino, and then I started talking.
Of, as you say, the donor class.
Cut that.
As I would say, capital owners.
So I think there's a huge difference between donor class and capital owners. But in this case, even within capital owners, the public corporations must be reformed. They're what led to corporatism. So if you set up the rules as we have them currently today in America, and you say you have no other concerns, no other stakeholders, you don't have to worry about your community, you don't have to worry about your workers. Your only directive, and we built it into the law. We built it because what is a company? A company is a legal fiction. It is something that we created as a state. In a democracy, at some point, we said there has to be this thing called a company so that it's limited liability and not everybody who works there is liable for what the company does. So that is necessary. But then when you turn them into public corporations and you write into the code, there's no other factors. You must make every single cent that you can. Well, then they're going to crush everything in their path. And that's what leads to capture of the government. That's what leads to paying your workers as little as possible.
Here's an idea I'm having right now. I feel like companies' size should be treated like taxes, right? Or like funds that you have available, sort of thing, right? Like if you're over, if you're like over $2 million, like blam, like you have to be treated like a public company, whether or not you decide to get listed on the stock market, right? You have to go under the same kind of scrutiny and everything else. And just an idea, might do something.
They get them to the breaking point, and so that is exactly what you're combating, and what I agree with you on, Haas. Okay.
Well, private corporations, again, though, still have that same inappropriate.
And by the way, like I'm gonna go back just to watch this again. I just have so much to say about this topic myself, but like that number, I just threw it out in the air, so don't like necessarily quote me on that being a specific number that I think it needs to be. I'm just saying, pick a number, right, where that makes sense. Like actually look at some numbers and say, okay, like regardless of this, like because Uber should have been started getting treated like that. They should have, and they were violating laws. Nobody was even doing anything about it, and it was disgusting. And there's a couple of like people who I kind of knew that were like taxi drivers, and they were really, they were most of them immigrants, they had put a bunch of their like life expect. Hold on, I gotta do something to fix this. And I don't know. I'm not saying that everything about Uber is wrong, but like a lot of what was done was wrong. And I believe Peter Thiel, who is a disgusting human being, I think we can all agree, he was one of the initial angel investors to Uber, if I'm not mistaken. Peter Thiel, Uber. I'm doing it. I just made a claim that I'm not 100% on. Yeah. Back in 2014, Peter Thiel claimed that Uber is the most. Oh wait, hold on. It says there's the most ethically challenged company in Silicon Valley. But he was at the time an investor in Uber. He wasn't invested in Uber. He was invested in Lyft. I got that. I knew I got that confused somehow. See, chat. Research isn't that hard. You see some of these people, you know, like Tim Pool, Steven Crowder making these ridiculous claims, Joe Rogan, and getting like live like fact check, and it's ridiculous that they can't manage to do a little research themselves. Okay, for whatever reason, this thing is acting crazy, so I'm just gonna play it.
Power dynamic, and it's not like wealthy people are offering more wages or offering like more benefits to their employees out of the kindness of their heart.
Yeah, so let's do those two.
It can happen.
That's right. That's right.
But
so
like,
you're
that's
right.
not the norm. So obviously someone has to apply pressure to ensure that even private corporations does that. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen, and it hasn't happened. And my point there is that it hasn't happened because, again, the wealthy have built this system in every institution.
Okay, so there's 4 layers to that. Let's try to break down. There's public corporations. We agree on public corporations. Yeah. They're fundamentally wrong in their infrastructure, in their setup, in their conception even, okay? So then there's private corporations, and you're right that there is a range there. So a person could be a good employer and share a lot with their employees. Actually, ironically, Howard Schultz, who's a terrible on politics, is actually a pretty good boss and has shared a lot more with his employees than other corporations have chosen to do. And it's partly because he's a founder. Even if when they became a public corporation, he retained enough power to be able to be decent to not only his employees, but to the farmers that he works with in Latin America, et cetera. It's so ironic because he seems like such a jerk right now publicly. But anyway, in a private corporation, you do have a range. But once you have the range, you're right, there'll be plenty of people at the top who go, no, I'm not going to share with my employees at all. I'm going to maximize every penny because I want to, right?
None of the processes that you mentioned.
AC in chat who wants Hassan 2028. I see you, pal. Bad Lefty agrees with BCAT on something. Bunch of stuff going on here. All right, continuing. It still seems like a reasonable conversation they're having right now. I'm a little disappointed. I assume there've been more yelling at this point.
Democratic, and that's precisely what I'm saying.
That's right.
The workers are not making the workers are not making democratic decisions in who they choose as their managers, or the workers are not making democratic decisions.
I got you. I'm getting to that. So,
okay.
So the first category,
okay.
you can't have democracy.
That felt like as like a dude who has uncles, like a good number of them. That felt like that sort of like uncle moment where it's like, okay, Uncle Chang, yeah, you got some views on this, okay, pal. I guess we'll let you. Look at that face too. He looks like he's at Thanksgiving dinner and just like, God, when do I get out of here? Is it 9 o'clock yet? Anyway,
in the workplace by definition. In the second category, you potentially could, but most don't. The third category is, I think, what you're advocating for, some sort of more, well, let me put it this way. It exists in the world. Like in Germany, there are boards where there's a management board and a supervisory board. The supervisory board is made up, depending on the size of the company, of 1/3 labor or even half labor. If the company is larger, it can be 50% of the board is controlled by labor. So that's a situation that says it's no longer optional. We're now saying some degree of democracy is mandatory at work. And if you set it up right, and I think the Germans largely have, well, that could work really, really great. And that's how you change the rules to get to the outcomes that you want. I think the fourth layer is when you then have the employees completely run the company. And I think, we'll talk about it more, but I think I'm totally opposed to that.
I think you are totally opposed to that. Otherwise, we would be running a cooperative corporation right now. My point was my point was, and still is, that
a laugh is, all right, not never, but that laugh sounds exactly like disagreement embodied in a laugh. Like he's just immediately ready to just like get in there and be like, oh, but Hassan, where you're wrong, Uncle Cenk's here to tell you what's going on, pal. Okay, I got something for you.
No matter how you cut it, like we have completely accepted this reality that of course it's not going to be a democratic process in the corporations, inside of the workplace, and that is shocking to me. It's always been shocking to me, and it's still shocking to this day to me that no one's like, wait a minute, we want to have a democracy, like we're advocating for a democracy and governance, but for some reason, we spend most of our lives in this place, and there is no democratic process where I don't get to figure out what I think is best for the company, or sit down with other people that even know better than me and like make the best possible choices, but have some sense of agency within.
I told you he was ready to get in there. This, I swear to God, this rotating background is like hypnotizing me. I feel like I'm just getting like sucked into this right now. Hashtag not all uncles. Fair, bad lefty. I take that. I totally hear you. You know. I too. I don't know if you're speaking from experience. I too am an uncle, but I try not to be that sort of prevaricating uncle about things. But you know. Hopefully, I'm not as terrible as Cenk. Oh God. Hey, at least he's not Anna.
My work.
There's like a hierarchy of terrible and leftist voices. All voices, really. I feel like. I mean, that I have personally. I don't think it's written down anywhere, but you know, maybe we could do like a tier list, like we did with the Trump co-conspirators. That was a fun one. I liked that. That was good. I still haven't clipped that. I'm planning on at least like clipping it at some point, like parts of it, like speeding it up. Because it's unbearably long. It's like 2 hours. And there was 18 co-conspirators. We read off all of their charges, and like it was nuts. I don't know who was here for that. Oh, Mike is out here. Take care, Mike. You getting a headache? Oh yeah. Well, don't overdo it. Don't overdo it. I'm also getting tired. I haven't taken a single break. I had so much content, I just went straight for 4 hours. Probably going to end the stream after this, like I said, but I hope everybody's enjoyed it. So, if you haven't already, hit that like button and consider subscribing so you don't miss any galactic content
that I'm creating. And that's obviously due to division of labor as well, but there are ways to mitigate that alienation, and we're not doing that. And one way of doing that is democratizing the workplace, which I think is a good first step towards higher levels of socialization, and then ultimately a drastic reorganization of our economy. We are going to go to a break.
Hold on. Let me just say one thing before we go to that. Yes, before we go to that. Look, guys, so I believe in some form of democracy in the workplace, and it's a balancing act. So in America, we have B Corps and benefit corporations, and that's a slightly different balancing act, and one that's really worthy to look at. And so, and I think that between that and the German example, there are some things that where we can get to a better balancing act, way better balancing act than we have here. But I think our fundamental disagreement, which we'll talk more about in the next hour, is I think there are many situations, including work, where a democracy doesn't necessarily make sense. So it's an interesting rhetorical point, and even one that is beyond rhetorical. It's an interesting point, period, that we should discuss, and that's why we're doing this. But you can certainly concede that there are situations like team sports, the military, where a democracy doesn't work. Hey guys, are we gonna take the hill or are we not gonna take the hill? Well, let's have a vote. Okay, well, if you have a vote, nobody's gonna go take the hill, right? Let alone the fact.
Okay, well, that conversation was way more boring than I was hoping for, but hey, shit happens. Absolutely no way stream. I think that was in response to maybe how long I'd gone without stopping, but yes, absolutely yes way. I mean, I feel like you were here for it, but maybe you stepped out a couple of times, and I don't blame you for that one. But yeah, I haven't taken a single actual break. I've been right here. I had so much content today that we made it 4 hours, 4 minutes shy right now, and I skipped over, like, and the thing is, I have like a playlist, right, where I keep all of my stuff saved to be able to to keep all my stuff saved and easily accessible. As you know, sometimes I get disorganized while I'm on stream, and it's easier for me to do it that way. But I've been deleting all the ones we watch. However, like the list of stuff I haven't watched on the stream now is like piling up now. And like today, I skipped over at least a few of them were skipped over just because we already did stuff where there was the exact same footage or containing the exact same content or context that we had already looked at. But yeah, there's like a ton of stuff. I skipped entirely over some like economics stuff that I had seen that I wanted to talk about, but it'll have to wait. There was too much stuff to do. Been another exhausting night, sitting here behind this desk, trying to parse through the entire internet all at once. It's an impossible job for one man, but I do what I can. Till I see you next time, you stay classy, Galactic Stream Nation.